Boston Globe business columnist Shirley Leung argues it's her first big test. She'll join us to discuss.
This week, the United Nations Heritage Agency named the French baguette something worthy of humanity's preservation, adding it to the intangible cultural heritage list, coming as boulangeries in rural France are vanishing. We'll discuss that with Tufts food policy writer Corbett Kummer, as well as a clean water crisis right here in America. All that ahead, Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. Moments ago, President Biden signed legislation imposing a labor contract on freight rail unions. The bill makes it illegal for the rail unions to strike. A potential walkout could have occurred next week, so Biden asked Congress to step in. He says a rail strike could have triggered a national economic catastrophe. The Democratic Party is shaking up the order in which states hold their presidential nominating contests. As NPR's Barbara Sprunt reports, it's likely that Iowa will lose its decades-long status as the first contest in the nation.
The Rules and Bylaws Committee of the DNC is meeting to discuss and vote on a recommendation of a handful of states to hold their primaries in the early window in 2024, ahead of Super Tuesday in March. States that move to the top of the lineup will get a boost in political power, not to mention the economic advantages of having campaigns set up shop ahead of elections. There's been concern among some Democrats in recent years that Iowa is not racially representative of the Democratic Party. The committee heard pitches from 17 states over the summer and is weighing factors like demographic diversity and competitiveness in a general election. Once the committee makes its decision, it will send its recommendation to the full DNC for a vote in January. Barbara Sprunt, NPR News, Washington.
The House January 6th committee is meeting behind closed doors today. Members are deciding whether to make criminal referrals for Donald Trump, the former president. He has refused the panel's subpoena to testify about the attack on the U.S. Capitol. A federal judge will hear arguments today in a legal challenge to Oregon's new voter-passed gun safety regulations. Oregon Public Broadcasting's Jonathan Levinson reports the lawsuit was brought by gun rights activists.
In a court filing, they argued provisions requiring gun buyers to get a permit before purchasing a firearm and banning magazines holding more than 10 rounds violate the Second Amendment right to bear arms. The plaintiffs are asking the judge to issue an injunction barring the new law from going into effect next week. In a response filed this week, State Attorney General Ellen Rosenblum said high-capacity magazines are not necessary to operate a firearm, and therefore banning them does not violate the Second Amendment. Neither does the permit requirement, she wrote, citing a recent Supreme Court ruling. This is one of 3 lawsuits seeking to block the new law. For NPR News, I'm Jonathan Levinson in Portland.
Lava is still flowing from Hawaii's Mauna Loa volcano. No structures are threatened, but the lava is creeping toward a key highway that connects 2 cities on Hawaii's Big Island. Ken Hahn is with the Hawaiian Volcano Observatory. He says the lava is more than 3 miles away from the road.
At this kind of rate, it would take at least a week for it to reach the highway.
The Mauna Loa lava is slowing down as it reaches more flat areas at the base of the volcano. Stocks are lower on Wall Street. The Dow is down nearly 200 points. This is NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro in studio today. A new state report on how hospital emergency departments get used is shedding further light on racial and economic disparities in health care. We have more from GBH Radio's Mark Hers.
The report shows that in the 4 years before the pandemic, Black and Hispanic residents were up to 3 times as likely to have to rely on ERs for care compared to white residents. Dr. Charles Anderson is head of the Dimmock Center, a community health resource in Roxbury. He says improving access to non-emergency care is one solution, but building trust is also important.
And if we do that early enough, we're going to actually prevent those more high cost, and not just in the dollar perspective, it's a cost of life. We can prevent those things by really focusing on delivering a trusted experience.
Anderson is part of a new group called the Health Equity Compact. They're issuing a spring report on the high economic cost of health inequities in Massachusetts. In Boston, I'm Mark Hers, GBH News 89.7.
This afternoon at 5 o'clock is when the Prince and Princess of Wales host the event they came to Boston for. It's the presentation of the Earthshot Prize Awards. It's the third and final night in Boston for the Royals. They'll be hosted by Governor Charlie Baker, First Lady Lauren Baker, Governor-elect Maura Healey, Attorney General-elect Andrea Campbell, Boston Mayor Michelle Wu, and State Treasurer Deb Goldberg, among others. And there will be music, too, at the MGM Music Hall in the Fenway. Performing will be Billie Eilish and her brother Phineas, along with Annie Lennox, Ellie Goulding, and others.
Support for NPR comes from Showtime with the new original series, George and Tammy. Jessica Chastain and Michael Shannon star as the complicated couple behind some of country music's most iconic songs. George and Tammy premieres December 4th on Showtime.
I'm Henry Santoro, GBH News 89.7.
Rowdy, I am Marjorie Egan. You are listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live as we do every Tuesday and every Friday from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Hello, Jim.
Hello, Marjorie. So the question we open with today is pretty simple. Should 16 and 17-year-olds be allowed to vote? You can weigh in by text or phone at 877-301-89.7. We've talked a ton on the show about the state of our democracy, the efforts to subvert it, the ways we can try to keep it alive. Well, this week, I believe the Boston City Council took a step in the right direction, voting to expand access to the ballot to future generations. 16 and 17-year-olds would be allowed to vote in municipal elections. The move still needs the signature of Mayor Wu. We haven't talked to her about it yet. Lawmakers on Beacon Hill, who've knocked down similar efforts in the past from places like Cambridge and Somerville. But for now, we're posing the question to you. If you can trust 16 and 17-year-olds with their parents' SUV or to lead a national gun safety movement as they have, can't we trust them with a ballot? You know, we hear so often how it's young people who are going to save our planet from climate change, save democracy. So why not give them a little bit of a head start on saving democracy? Again, our number to call or text is 877-301-8970. A couple of programming notes before we get to your thoughts. One, I'm not sure the exact time. I believe the Prince and Princess will be here at 11:15.
God, we hope so.
If you want to come by. Maybe 11:20. They may be a few minutes late. I'm not sure. They have a busy schedule. And if you're with us, and only if you're with us at the Boston Public Library, we're running a special BPR sort of Christmas early special.
That's right.
Marjorie's idea.
My idea.
A smug mug raffle. You see Fernando. Raise your hand, Fernando, please. If you go to him to enter, I don't think you need to applaud Fernando, but that's fine.
No, he's done a great job.
We'll give one away at the end of every hour. And by the way, if you don't know why it's called a smug mug, all you have to do is look at Marjorie's photograph and then turn it around and look at me, and you will know why it's called a smug mug. Again, sign up or you get a raffle thing or whatever. It costs nothing from our colleague Fernando here.
Yeah, we also want to say this is kind of special for us. We'd like to welcome the outgoing leader of GBH, John Abbott, who's here with us today, and the incoming leader of GBH, Susan Goldberg. Thank you very much for coming down.
Thank you. It's great to have you both here.
The Boston Public Library.
Okay, so Marjorie, 16 and 17-year-olds.
Yeah.
The vote was 9-4 in the Boston City Council. And I have to say, not only do I think it's a good time and idea in normal times, when we talk, I'd say 3 or 4 times a week about democracy hanging by a thread for a variety of reasons, what better way to get people in early, young people in early?
Well,
by the way, I would bet that you did what I did when my kids were younger. They're now 28 and 30. Did you not take them to vote with you?
I did.
When
take
they were
them.
single-digit little kids?
Maybe once or twice I took them to vote for me. But I think we have to be honest and transparent here, Jim. There's a
Meaning
reason
what?
that you want to talk about this, and it has to do with your obsession from this back when you were a city councilor in Cambridge, when this is one of your chief efforts. How'd it go, Jim?
Well, actually, it's funny you should say that, Marjorie. That's part of the reason. When I was a city councilor, I was the chief sponsor. By the way, I retired undefeated from the Cambridge City Council. We do know that. Yes, correct. That's correct. After one illustrious term. The matter prevailed on a vote of 8-1. And then, why are you laughing? Then it died in the State House on a home rule petition.
Because I don't think that's exactly accurate.
Meaning what?
I think it passed, Jim, after you left the city
Well,
council.
that is true. That
no
is
one wanted
true.
to vote for your
the years
proposition.
that I was on the council, I did introduce it. It did not prevail those years, but it did the next. And it went to the State House, and it died where, all good ideas go to die. The State House, which we can talk about. Well, actually, let's talk about it now for a minute. I said in the beginning, Mayor Wu's got to sign this. Obviously, the mayor has to sign it or it dies. The notion that, and we've discussed this a million times, including with Governor Baker, ad nauseum, I should say, the notion that a governing body in a city or town passes something that would only apply to its community and the people in its community, and the people on Beacon Hill have to sign off is absurd. This whole home rule petition thing is absurd, but it currently is the constitutional mandate.
877-301-8970 is the number. You can call us or text us at that number. Should 16 and 17-year-olds be allowed to vote in municipal elections? This is the proposal, obviously, for municipal elections.
Only municipal.
We have people like, Ayanna Pressley, Congresswoman, and the Senator Elizabeth Warren, along with Markey. There are people who want to do this on a federal level.
Have to change the Constitution.
But this deal is involving the city of Boston. Amanda from Fall River, thank you for calling.
Hi, Amanda. Welcome.
Hi there. Thanks for taking my call and for bringing the subject up.
Thanks.
I absolutely support 16 and 17-year-olds voting. I've heard that brains aren't fully formed for, a number of years, maybe to age 25, 28, but that's about planning. And this isn't an impulse issue. If you are motivated to vote and you want to have a voice in the democracy that you are living in, I think it's a good thing to encourage young people to think ahead and then vote. This is not going to be them running to the polls on an impulse and making a poor decision. They have the same opportunity as everyone else to hear from, their elected officials. And there's no age limit on voting, and we're all susceptible to misinformation. So I don't think that because my grandmother is 98 and she believes in a particular candidate for any number of reasons, that I should stop her from voting, and I wouldn't stop a 17-year-old from being well-informed and participating in our democracy.
Amanda, if I may, there's already evidence in this state that there's a lot of interest on the part of young people. Deval Patrick signed a voting reform measure before he left office, and one of the things it did, it's the existing law in our state, that 16 and 17-year-olds, while they can't vote, they can pre-register to vote. So they're not really getting anything other than sort of a head start. And we looked it up this morning. More than 230,000 16 and 17-year-olds have used that opportunity to pre-register, which suggests to me there's a huge appetite for this, and I think we should satisfy the appetite. Amanda, thank you much for the call.
We have a couple of good texts. Right now, we live in a country where a 16-year-old can be forced to become a mother, but lawmakers don't want to let her have a say in the laws that would govern her. Some lawmakers seem to think 16 is great for paying taxes on paychecks, but not to have a say in the laws that affect her in a country that literally fought a war over taxation without representation. That's from Kim in Boston. And then we have Kingsley in Sudbury say, do I trust the teen vote? So-called adults elected Donald Trump in the face of obvious racism and voice recordings of bragging about performing sexual assault. Could teens do any worse than that? It is their future. Let them vote.
877-301-8870. One of the incredibly insightful things I said when I was sponsoring this thing, I looked it up this morning, is that habits that you develop when you're young, bad habits like smoking, good habits like participating in democracy, the science shows tend to stay with you. And so it's yet another good reason to be doing this thing. 877-301-8970. And by the way, for those who are still skeptics, I assume virtually everybody listening to the show has great respect, regardless of their politics, for Congressman Jamie Raskin. Do you know who was the chief sponsor as a state senator in Maryland when Tacoma Park, Maryland,
was it Raskin?
Did this? It was State Senator Jamie Raskin, and it's been very successful there. At least it was in the early years, from what I understand.
You do see an increase in voting among young people in these recent elections. We definitely have seen that. And we saw when Markey ran against Joe Kennedy here for the
Sunrise,
Senate. He got a huge, Markey got huge support from the Sunrise Movement, which of course is made up of a lot of young people who are worried tremendously about climate change because they're the ones that are going to have to live through the worst of it.
We've had David Hogg on this show, by the way, just as an example. I know he's an extraordinarily young man, but David Hogg was a high school student when he and others decided, Emma Gonzalez and others, that they were not going to take the horror that befell their classmates in Parkland and led a movement that at least had saw some serious progress just a few months ago. So I think the proof is in that pudding. Let's go to Gary in Cambridge. You're next on Boston Public Radio. Thank you for calling. Hi, welcome.
Yeah, Gary Scholes calling from Cambridge. I have a better suggestion than the 16-year-old.
What is it?
I think what you should you should have any kid who can pass a civics course in high school should be able to vote. That would hit two nails. That is, it would initiate civics courses, which they should be teaching.
Yeah.
And it would also get young people involved in voting.
Yeah, but Gary, the only problem with that is if we gave the same civics test to adults, then we'd have nobody voting in America. What do we do about that?
I can't solve that problem, but as a former civics teacher and history teacher, yeah, and kids nowadays, I don't think they really get that kind of education.
I don't
the
think
adults are a good example of it.
Yeah, I don't think they do either, Gary. We need a lot more
Nicole.
civics education, I think, in the schools today. We have a couple of more good emails. This is from Paul from Worcester. This sounds like a form of gerrymandering by Democrats. While I think Republicans are generally evil, he says, this sounds like the Democrat politicians saying, we want to give the right to vote to people who are likely to vote for us.
Paul, with all due respect, that is absurd. I mean, even if it's factually accurate, the fact that a 16 and 17-year-old leans in a particular direction is secondary. The primary issue is, should they be enfranchised? And I frankly have never, the only argument you ever hear is they don't have enough experience.
Right.
And I think is that one texter said a few minutes ago, the experience of adult voters has not been so hot. Give it a chance on a local level and see where it goes from there.
Here's a good one from Jen in Salem. We should have a clear decision on maturity. We can't leave school until we're 16. We can kill in the military at 18. We can't buy alcohol until we're 21. We vote at 18. Our nation sounds confused.
877-301-8970. Again, if you just tuned in, it was the Boylston City Council that initiated this. The other day, they voted 9-4 to send a home rule petition, which means the legislature ultimately has to approve it, to the mayor's desk. Mayor signs, or if she doesn't sign, it's dead. If she does sign, it goes to Beacon Hill. And, you know, we don't know, I assume you're thinking this, and we should have said it, I have no idea what Governor-elect Maura Healey's position is on this. I know that Governor Baker, I interviewed him for a piece, actually was on the radio with us for a piece I wrote in the Globe magazine a few years ago. He did not support it. He didn't like the idea. But Maura Healey, I don't know where she is on it.
The municipal election thing makes so much sense for 16 and 17-year-olds because what's one of the biggest issues in Boston? The schools, right? They would get to decide if we ever elect more members of the city council, whom they should elect for city council. We certainly could, for a school committee and city council, the same thing. I mean, they're very impacted by what goes on in local politics.
And on that note, then why is it when I said to you years ago that what I also did when I was a city councilor is I filed a petition to allow the parents of undocumented kids to vote in local school elections in Cambridge? You ridiculed me. Aren't they affected as directly as anybody could possibly be?
It may have been because it was your suggestion.
Exactly. Thank you. Jane and Stowe.
I didn't like it.
You're next on Boston Public Radio with Marjorie Egan and me, Jim Browdy. We're live at the Boston Public Library. Welcome, Jane.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi.
Hi. I just wanted to quickly mention off the back of your comment about building a good habit as a young person. When you start voting at 18, a lot of kids are leaving home and establishing a new home at college, and it's difficult to vote from there. They had to arrange for absentee ballots, mail-in votes, and I had to arrange to get them their ballots on campus. I have 2 college kids, and their friends looked at me when I showed up on campus with ballots like I had 6 heads. What do you mean we're going to vote? Like they just don't know how to do it from a distance, and it would be so much better if they got in the habit when they were 16.
That's an excellent argument, Jane.
You know, Jane, this doesn't apply to the Boston initiative, but in one of the things in the federal initiative that Elizabeth Warren was talking about, they would have this Voting Rights Act, and what it would mean is there'd be legislation requiring states to establish pre-registration and let them expand that at the colleges so they could, and it would also mandate that colleges and universities have on-campus polling places and that states accept student IDs to meet voter identification for federal elections. So that's not the municipal thing we're talking about in Boston, but you raised a great point. If they're going to be able to do it any more extensively, they certainly should be able to do it from their college campuses. Wasn't there a big fight
in New Hampshire
about this
they tried
the last
to
election?
Well, that's the situation in New Hampshire where the young people didn't want to vote at home.
Right.
They wanted to vote in the state in which they were going to college. and I believe it was Governor Sununu, but we should check it out, and others up there who are a little concerned about it. Jane, thank you for your thoughts. We really appreciate it. 877-301-8970. You know, my memory is fairly short. I know we've raised this with legislative leaders. I know we've raised it with governors on the show. What is the rationale for the home rule petition other than control?
Well, that's
Beacon Hill wants to control everything.
That's the only rationale. I mean, a lot of us are very frustrated with the slowness, the glacial-like pace of Beacon Hill about everything, and this is just another thing that shouldn't even be there.
Well, you know what's another good example? As we know, Mayor Wu is a supporter, I was going to call it rent control, she doesn't call it rent control, rent stabilization. If the people of Boston, through their elected leaders, want to have some form of rent stabilization, why should people on Beacon Hill decide that within the borders of Boston it's inappropriate? What business is it even of theirs?
I mean, you said the reason they don't want to give up that power. I mean, that could be the only possible reason, or it's just inertia that they move so slowly and everything, and this is not one of the things at the top of their list. Anyway, we're talking with you about the Boston City Council's move to get 16 and 17-year-olds the right to vote in city elections here in Boston. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming on YouTube at youtube.com/GBH News.
Next time on The World, today this is known as Carol of the Bells. 100 years ago, at the dawn of Ukrainian independence, it had different lyrics. In 1922, a choir from Ukraine came to the U.S. singing it and asking for U.S. support. A century later, young Ukrainians have come to the U.S. to repeat the performance and the plea for help. Their music and their story on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you and Ocean State Job Lot, fighting hunger by donating food to regional food banks and local food pantries. Learn more at oceanstatejoblot.com. And City Year. City Year works to make a difference in the lives of students by placing AmeriCorps mentors in public school classrooms, helping students to feel supported and stay on track to graduation. More at cityyear.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marge Egan and Jim Browdy. We're live at the Boston Public Library. Please join us. We're talking about the Boston City Council's 9-4 vote to get 16 and 17-year-olds voting in municipal elections. Again, it needs the approval of the mayor and a majority of people at the State House. A couple of programming announcements that we should mention. We've mentioned Governor Baker a couple times. He will be with us for Ask the Governor next Thursday, correct, Jamie? The 8th, Governor Baker actually is last as the governor. And on Tuesday, somebody you're not going to want to miss, we've had on before, Senator Whitehouse from Rhode Island has done a better job of educating the public about dark money's influence in politics, particularly their influence. He's focused right now on their power to, quote, capture the Supreme Court is the term he used. His new book is called The Scheme. Senator Whitehouse is going to join us on Tuesday. The number is 877-301-8970.
And we're talking about whether 16 and 17-year-olds should get to vote in municipal elections in Boston, as the City Council is considering here in Boston. This is from Dave in Auburn. I think it's a great idea for the kids to vote. These kids have grown up doing active shooter drills and live with the fear of getting murdered before 2 p.m. 5 days a week. Environment is changing, and they expect to have to deal with all our mistakes. And this is from an unsigned person, but 16 and 17-year-olds voting, yes. As it is, the majority of Republicans in the House are stuck in perpetual adolescence, and they implausibly get to vote. I would say, looking at the emails, we got about a 4-to-1 favorite. Let's have the 16 and 17-year-olds.
I was just going to say, for our colleagues who are screening the calls, we'll take Karen, and then let's go to somebody who's on the other side of this question, if we can. Karen in the car, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Thank you much for the call. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you.
I spoke to you guys a couple of years ago, I think, when the civics requirement first got put into the curriculum.
Explain that. Can you explain to us what is in the curriculum? Because I think we misspoke a minute ago. What is in the curriculum vis-a-vis civics?
Okay, one requirement that was added, at least at the high school level, is that before the students graduate, they have to includes some type of a civics project. So what tends to happen is I taught in Fall River at Durfee.
My alma mater.
I know. So for the majority of students senior year, there isn't a full history requirement. We have kind of a community-based activity type of thing, and that tends to be where they fulfill the civics requirement. It might be working with a community group. It might be, looking at some laws, and so that's what they do. But what happens is because of the way the curriculum is structured from K all the way up to 12th grade, there's not a lot of places to just do a government, we don't do a whole year on government. We don't do, it gets folded into everything else. And once upon a time, there was a civics course, but we haven't taught that way in a few years, and I think it really does start to show in that kids get a very small chunk of it right at the end when they're kind of ready to get out, but not with really enough background, I think, to get them deeply involved in the whole process.
Karen,
so I think it's great.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I'm really glad you shared the information with us. It's really important.
Karen,
I hope they expand it.
Did you hear about the huge melee after the Thanksgiving football game between
Durfee and who?
Durfee and New Bedford?
What happened?
About 80 people out in the field beating each other up. Yeah.
That's because they didn't take the civics course, Karen. Karen, thank you very much for your info.
That was
we
all
appreciate
over
it.
the newspapers. It was very.
What was the cause of that?
I do not know. Melee on the field. Whatever it is.
Exactly.
Melee on the field after Thanksgiving turkey
Well, I'm sure
day.
you're quite proud.
I was
the
not.
Hilltoppers, they're called. Do you
the
know
Hilltoppers,
that?
the Hilltoppers. It was New Bedford, too. They were there as well. Yeah. Okay, listen to this. This is parents will just make their clueless 16-year-olds vote for their choice. It's just giving parents extra votes.
By the way, let me just say, I can only speak from my personal experience. My kids had no interest when they started voting they may have by chance voted for the same people or issues I did. They were so wildly and wonderfully independent. I think it's almost the exact opposite kind of thing.
It could be.
They're going to want to show their
When you're
freedom.
16, you'd vote for whoever your parents is.
Well, I don't know about that either.
You vote on the opposite side of
We
your
do have
parents in every
somebody
single
who's on
thing.
the other side of this. Let's go to John in the car. John, welcome. Hey, John. John, you called us.
Hi, John.
Hi, John. Well, that went well. Let's put John on hold. He's on the other side of this issue. We'll try to get back to him in a minute. 877-301-8970.
Here's Adam from New Hampshire. So let me get this straight. We acknowledge, backed by research, that the brain is not fully developed, and therefore we cannot hold young adults responsible for certain crimes, as well as research that they are very impressionable, but we're going to put other people's lives in their hands if they vote.
Well, I mean, but that argument is like I did a thing the other night on television about whether Joe Biden's too old, and learned from the Journal of Neurology, JAMA's Journal of the American Medical Association Neurology, 40% of people over 85 in this country suffer from serious cognitive impairment. So should they stop voting when they're 85? I mean, the bottom line is there are a lot of impairment on lots of levels, and I think young people have demonstrated in the last couple of years in particular that they are as concerned about the state of this democracy as any age group there is.
Well,
John is back.
Britain from Rosendale
sorry.
says, I'm less concerned about young digital natives voting than I am older digitally illiterate boomers, like herself, I guess, after all, who fell for the easily debunkable 4chan-derived QAnon movement.
John, you're back, and you're in a car. Welcome to the show. Thank you for calling.
Yes, I just wanted to say, nobody's taking into account that in small towns, the kids could literally take over the entire town.
Good. What's wrong with that? If they vote and everybody else doesn't, what's the problem exactly, John? I mean, the only way they could take it over is if older people decided they weren't going to exercise the franchise, right?
Except for they're not mature enough and do not have enough knowledge to do what needs to be done.
Hey, John, John, what town are you in?
I'm actually in Rentham.
In Rentham. Is there revolution afoot in Rentham?
No, but actually when I lived in Millis, I did threaten to make them paint the police station pink with purple polka dots, and I did have enough people that would come to town meetings.
Exactly. Well, I think if in Rentham, John, if people spent less time at the outlets and more time studying democracy, we'd be... I mean, John, you're arguing against yourself with all due respect. If it turns out kids could overtake it, it means that adults, in your estimation, are not being responsible about participating in democracy. And if they care more about outcomes than the adults do, I say 3 cheers. John, thank you, though, for your call. We appreciate it. Hey, by the way, John's not alone, we should say. There are a decent number of texts, not a majority.
Oh, yep.
That think kids are too immature. The whole brain developing thing. But my understanding is the latest science on brain developing, particularly around criminal justice things, is we're talking 23, 24 years old. Nobody's talking about raising the voting age until there's a fully formed brain and thinking capacity.
Oh,
so
we have a lot of people who are in favor, though. I think it's
majority. I
overwhelming.
know.
Yeah, majority. And, Paul from Braintree, should be automatic voter registration when a 16-year-old gets his or her driver's license. There you go.
Yeah, by the way, here we go again. This is Fern Kitty on YouTube. Says, I'm not sure that it is a cardigan. It looks Miami Vice-ish. It is not.
Is that your outfit today?
It's just a warm shirt over my T-shirt. Fern Kitty.
Miami Vice is not what came to mind.
Fern Kitty doesn't give a damn
really.
about 16 and 17-year-olds voting, but apparently does care about what really matters.
I think you should wave to her.
I think
on YouTube. We're on YouTube. There you go.
Fern Kitty, don't
Hey,
text
Fern.
us again. Thank you very much. Tim. No, that's okay.
It's Don Johnson. He's right over there. Who knew?
Oh, I swoon for Don Johnson. Hey, Tim, how are you? You're in New York. You're calling. What's up?
Yeah, so I wanted to share that Tacoma Park, Washington passed this law almost 10 years ago.
Tacoma Park, Maryland. Maryland, not Washington. Maryland.
Correct. And it's correct. Tacoma Park, Maryland, which is immediately outside of D.C.
Mm-hmm.
It happens to be the home of Jamie Raskin.
I mentioned that too. The brilliant Jamie Raskin. No, it's fine.
Okay.
So when they passed it, they weren't thinking so much about kids. They were thinking about the 18, 19, and 20-year-olds who are currently being governed and never had an opportunity to vote for who's representing them.
That's interesting.
Because if you just missed the election, a week before your 18th birthday, you were potentially being governed by a mayor or congressman or council member for years while you're of the age of majority, but you never had an opportunity to vote for that.
Yeah, Tim, and you're also paying, a lot of kids are paying taxes, right? They're working.
Of course they are.
And so they're, taxation without representation kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Tacoma Park's thinking, to my understanding, was largely to give more current 18, 19, and 20-year-olds the opportunity to be represented. And the only way they can do that is to have voted, because of the way elections fall, every 2, 4, 6 years, to give them the opportunity to vote when they're 16.
That was great, Tim. Thanks for the update. By the way, speaking of Jamie Raskin, who we've mentioned twice, and I assume most people know him, member of Congress from Maryland, sat on the, I think, second impeachment thing, constitutional law professor on the January 6th committee. He and Zoe Lofgren from California, the other congressperson, on one of the others on the committee, I believe are head of the subcommittee that will decide whether the final report makes criminal referrals to the Department of Justice. And as we've said on the show, it's not mandated. The DOJ makes its own decision one way or another. But I feel pretty good having two really grown-up members of Congress, Raskin and Lofgren, in that position.
He's a very impressive guy.
Well, she's pretty impressive character, too, I should say.
Bob from Pembroke, thank you for calling.
Hi, Bob.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I was the faculty advisor at a high school for student government, and we had a unique program where there were student legislators who could propose legislation at school. I would not be in favor of 16 to 17-year-olds voting in regular elections, but we did two things that were interesting. We had voter registration at the high school every year that was organized and implemented by the students with the local government officials, number one. And number two, for every election in the community, we had a mock election in the school.
Mm-hmm.
So that students could experience that, and then we would be able to share the results and discuss it from many different angles. So it really kind of got kids excited about the possibility of voting and the importance of it. So I would be in favor of those kinds of interventions being in place before going to 16 or 17.
Bob, before you go away, what you did was great. I think it's wonderful. But obviously you have hands-on experience with kids that age. Why would you oppose them having the right to vote?
I just didn't see the kids, even the seniors, frankly, as being, well, you could probably say this about adults as well.
No, but it's okay. Go ahead.
Not as well informed about many of the issues and candidates that I think they could and should be. So I think 18 is great. I had to wait till I was 21, but I think 18 is terrific. And But I think getting kids acclimated to the notion of the importance of voting is really critical.
That's great, Bob. Thanks for the call. By the way, it was during the Vietnam War that the Constitution was changed. I think 26th Amendment, whatever it is, some amendment, 26th, I think, lowered the voting age to 18. And one of the things that caller just mentioned, if you weren't tuning in at the beginning, while there is nothing statewide, nor is there anything in Boston yet that allows 16 and 17-year-olds to vote, a reform we mentioned under Governor Patrick allows 16 and 17-year-olds to pre-register to legally vote when 18, and several 100,000 young people have already used it. So we would urge people to do that very same thing.
Here's Cheryl from Norwell. I can't believe we are even arguing over this. How could it be any worse than it is now? I teach college, and I think young people are a whole lot more aware and compassionate than many voting adults.
On that note, we'll talk to the mayor about it when she joins us and find out what her position, if she's going to sign the thing, which obviously is required if it's to move to the legislature.
Okay, coming up, we're going to talk to Boston Globe business columnist Shirley Young and how the Great Resignation became the Great Rethink, what employers are saying about letting workers bring their dogs, as in poodles, labs, or bull mastiffs, into the office. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library. We are streaming on live at youtube.com/GBH News. Shirley Young is next.
Hi, my name is Tibisay Sea and I'm a reporter with The World. I'm also the host of a new podcast in Spanish about healthcare for Latinos.
Te contamos las historias de otros inmigrantes en su lucha por conservar su salud y entrevistamos a médicos e investigadores sobre cómo vivir más años y con mejor salud.
Listen tomorrow morning at 9:30 on GBH 89.7 o en tu plataforma de podcast favorita.
Funding for our programs comes from you and the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds for the citizens and businesses of the Commonwealth. You can see if you have unclaimed money at findmassmoney.com. And Mission Safe, working comprehensively with Boston's youth to provide caring relationships, horizon-broadening activities, arts, job training, and more. Details at missionsafe.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're joined now by Shirley Young. Shirley, of course, is business columnist for the Boston Globe and a weekly BPR contributor. Hello there, Shirley.
Hi, Jim. Hi, Marjorie.
Hey there.
Oh, I get a pre-clap.
Yes, she does.
That's
she gets a
new.
pre-clap.
Well, you better
That
do
is
well,
new.
my friend.
I know.
Let me tell you.
Pressure's on.
Yeah, keep the pace up, Shirley. Keep the pace up. So, in New York City, the mayor is talking about, Eric Adams is talking about involuntarily taking people who with severe mental illness deemed to be a harm to themselves off the streets involuntarily. Brings us back to the discussion around Mass and Cass here in Boston. Sheriff Tompkins, remember, he was talking about people, bringing people into the lockup there, 3 months of care for alcohol, cocaine, other drugs, or mental illness, which Maura Healey seemed to be on board with back in, just recently. You talked about that. No, that's the T. She's talked about how
She said she supported the effort.
Yes,
she supported the effort.
Yeah, she was open-minded on she said
So,
we need to explore everything.
Is this something we can revisit as we hear more and more about the tragic situation down there in the South End?
I mean, you're not the only ones to kind of raise this with me who's like, are you seeing what's happening in New York City? I did text Sheriff Tompkins. I haven't heard back from him to see if he would revisit the idea of using his facility to house people from Mass and Cass. They get picked up on involuntary, treatment.
Civil commitments.
Civic commitments. And it's interesting what's happening in New York City because Mayor Adams is getting the same kind of pushback. This is people have to be ready. We can't use the police we can't arrest our way out of this problem. Though there is one big difference in New York City is that I think one of the issues is that these are mentally ill and they need psychiatric beds, and there's a real shortage of that. Whereas Sheriff Tompkins, he vacated an entire floor of his jail. He had all the beds set up. He had soap. He bought new furniture, and so he was ready to go. And so he had the space, but the political will wasn't there in the end.
Well, I really would be curious. I know there was a lot of opposition from experts in the field saying that if you're not ready to go into treatment, it's not going to work.
Right.
But on the other hand, often what treatment means is a few days of detox. It doesn't mean 3 months of care in a facility because it's almost impossible to get that, even if you are well insured. So that was the thing that I always thought, maybe it's worth a try, 3 months of care.
I just know that when I talked to Sheriff Tompkins about this maybe a year ago, I think he had moved on because he knows Mayor Wu she's housing first. He felt like she didn't want to come near this topic of arresting people and putting formerly homeless and those with addiction in jail.
They were outstanding warrants, though, weren't
outstanding
they?
warrants, yes.
Yeah, there were people that already had court issues, were they not? I think they were.
Yes.
But the reason, this may be obvious based on our conversation, the reason this may be different come January, is it 6th or 5th? 5th, when Maura Healey is sworn in, is Mayor Wu on our show, and then Charlie Baker responding on our show, was not very happy with the level of support she was getting from Governor Baker. Governor Baker, his head almost exploded when he was responding to it a couple of days later.
That was a good interview.
And it was
that was a
all
very
him.
good interview on the radio.
Well, there you go.
Thank you. And he also, Mayor Lou Sutter, as head of Health and Human Services, fired off this multi-page letter saying all we're doing, we're doing tons, including $40 million. If she wants additional money from Maura Healey, and the new governor is at minimum open to this idea, and the mayor of New York City is paving the way, even though it's controversial, I think this has at least a better chance of being a pilot program, even though, by the way, and I assume I'm speaking for all three of us, I think you make a compelling argument, and you and Tory Bedford have done brilliant reporting on Mass and Cass. Extraordinary measures have to be taken. Hopefully not ones that violate the rights of individuals, but the problem is a real, as Mayor Wu said this a month ago, the single issue that was driving her the most crazy in her first year in office was the intractable nature of the crisis at Mass and Cass. So,
yeah, we'll see what happens. I think a lot rests on Sheriff Tompkins. He and Michelle Wu go way back. I think they worked on Elizabeth Warren's first Senate
I didn't know that. Is that true?
Yeah, I think they sat next to each other in the campaign office, and so they were early supporters of each other. And so it will be. I think that's the relationship to watch as well between Tompkins and Wu.
We're talking to Shirley Young from the Boston Globe. So we've used the term Great Resignation. The great program here was the Big Quit. But you spoke to this really interesting guy at Harvard Business School, yes?
Ron J was on your program.
He was?
That was Ron J. Bellotti.
I didn't know it was him.
It was him,
Oh, he is fabulous,
He's
by
fabulous,
the way.
isn't he?
About something that he calls the Great Rethink. We didn't talk about that night. That's why I didn't recognize it. So tell us what the Great Rethink is.
Yeah, so Ron J. Bellotti just wrote a book called Deep Purpose, and his area of research is helping organizations, find purpose and kind of energize their employees, and his theory is that everyone says we have this notion that everyone's is quitting their job left and right, but the majority of employees say that they will stay in their current job and they have no plans to look for a new job.
Didn't you say it was high 60%
yes,
or something?
Yes, like 64%. Yeah. And so almost 2/3, right? And so he says what's really going on is something called the Great Rethink. Everybody is in this process of thinking about, am I really happy at work, or how to be happier? How do I find purpose? And so he thinks that's what's going on. And so he's been writing articles, doing podcasts, and going on TV shows like yours and to talk about this.
We have sound, don't we? We do. Here's a little bit of sound from, I think, a TED Talk or something he did.
Yes.
Here's a little bit from Gulati himself.
I want you to find purpose in what you do. And I want you to be able to connect it to the purpose in what your organization, whatever you're going to work is. And if you can make that connection, you will never feel like you're working a day in your life.
Pretty good line. Pretty good line.
You know, he talked about purpose in work. You have purpose in work. Yes. But you got quite personal in this story, talking about the toll that the pandemic took on you about, and tell us what you wrote.
Yeah, so I've been talking to Ron J. I almost feel like it's a free career therapy. This is my third or fourth conversation with Ron J. And because just like, you know, so that TED Talk that you played, that advice actually came from his mother. And can I tell the full story?
Sure. Of course.
So he grew up in India, and his mom was this real pioneer. And, you know, Indian kind of clothing and design is kind of, you know, saris and whatever. We're used to seeing that now, today. It's part of, we can identify that pattern. But back in the 70s, you know, for Europeans, for the rest of the world, it was kind of a new fashion design. And so his mom, you know, had a clothing business, a fashion business, supplying kind of Indian designs to kind of the European fashion houses. And so he grew up working in his mom's clothing business, and he's like, everybody is working so hard. And so that story that he tells is that he was 16 years old, he was complaining to his mom, like, why is everyone working so hard? And she was saying, my wish for you, Ron J, is that you, that you find purpose in life, for purpose at work. Because if you do, you will never feel like you ever worked a day in your life. And that actually shaped his work,
mantra, yeah.
his work at Harvard Business School. And so, and I end up writing about this because I was like, that's what's missing, or that's what's going on with me, is that up until the pandemic, work never felt like work. You know, I was very passionate, and I loved my work. And then suddenly during the pandemic, and now it's changed. It's harder to work. If work feels like work. And
why?
Why? And I think it's because that's what I'm trying to get at. Why? Because I do have deep purpose. You know, my work has meaning.
I know, it's the greatest thing about journalism,
right?
Isn't it?
Especially writing a column, and you know, Marjorie.
Yeah.
And so having written columns for many years at the Herald. And so it's like, why? And then, so I've been reading his book, trying to like take his advice, you know, trying to find purpose. And, you know, one of the things he gets companies to do is to kind of, to kind of come up with like one sentence to kind of summarize or embody what your work is about. And so I did that. I was like, okay, I think my purpose, if I had to summarize in one sentence, is kind of, what did I say? To inform and connect, to create a better Boston for all.
Yes,
you know, I was like,
which
wow,
is very impressive.
I was like, wow, that's kind of a you know, that should get me going every morning. But I still struggle, and I think part of it is that, I mean, how can the pandemic has changed my relationship to work? You know, I have two.
Did your bosses know about this? And before you wrote I'm serious. Before you wrote the piece.
I don't know. I don't know if my bosses knew, my colleagues knew, you know.
But you also point out, which I thought was important, that come on, Microsoft,
Right.
does that have a great purpose? But then you wrote about, well, okay, that it could be to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more through using their stuff.
And, right, that's a purpose. I thought it was like, how can Microsoft have purpose? They make Excel spreadsheets. There's no deep meaning in that. But once the CEO crafted that, I was like, oh yeah, I get it. But the other thing Ron J talked about was that sometimes it's not this. Maybe the sentence itself, maybe to the outside world, doesn't have that much meaning, right? Because it can get you can get cynical about it. And you're like,
Yeah.
But he said it's the process of getting to that one sentence just gets everyone excited or on the same playing level to figure out why do we come to work every day?
So Shirley, where the rubber hits the road is whether they really do it or just talk about it at TED Talks. The Globe did its usual best businesses, whatever.
Top places
There
to
was
work.
also a great piece written about bringing your dogs to work as sort of a
loved
bet.
it.
We're going to talk to listeners about that later.
Oh, I love that.
Are the companies that I don't know if that's the right word, made the list of the best places to work at, do they incorporate some of the things that he's thinking about?
You know, a lot of the I'm not sure specifically, but I know that a lot of the organizations, there, as everyone knows, there's a real fight for talent right now, and I do feel that companies are stepping up their benefits. You know, whether it's wellness stipends, whether it's Athena Health allowing employees to bring their dogs to work.
I love that story.
But you know what? It's crazy about that. It's like they get them. Don't they have like pet sitting stipends?
Yes.
They do.
And they have basically yappy hour, like
Yappy
happy hour
hour.
for their dogs, right? I was thinking, my God, if you think about the dogs of Athena Health, right? The dogs of Athena Health have almost better, like they get treated better than humans at other companies, right?
Yeah.
I was like, wow, this is incredible. But there is a sense of there's more benefits beyond pay. And what's so interesting about this list this year is that a lot of the top companies were biotech companies. Alnylam was number one in terms of largest. Vertex was also up there. Relay Therapeutics, and so and what's going on? You know, there's a real boom in life sciences here. So they're really a war for talent is going on, and so they're really
They were talking about things like running shoes. You could use extra money to buy running shoes to go to dance classes, or free diapers, or even talking more about how you would reduce your carbon footprint.
Yeah.
I mean, all these things were
inflation, right? There wasn't there like inflation bonuses or raises for inflation.
So do you mind if we can move to another topic here because
Yes,
time's
Jim,
running?
we may.
I'm just where you wrote. I think it's your 400th column about the millionaire's tax. And let me tell you something. I mean, really? It passed. By the way, are you aware of that?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, fine. What was the theme of this particular installment?
Moving vans are driving up now.
By the way, you quoted somebody, and good for you, because it runs counter to one of the issues you've raised. You spoke to some accountant who said, nobody's moving out of state. Some people have multiple domiciles.
Yes.
Like Herschel Walker really lives in Texas, not in Georgia. They may choose to switch as their primary residence to a Florida. That may happen in some cases.
Was that my tax guy? You always quote my tax
No,
guy.
that was Amy Pitter, the former, who is the president of the Mass CPAs and also the former head commissioner, Department of Revenue commissioner of the state.
But what's interesting in your piece, I'm really glad you brought this up, is that while the Fair Share Amendment, the millionaire's tax, everybody knows what it was. Question one passed 52 to 48 or thereabout. It's part of the Constitution. Since it's part of the Constitution, I think most people were of the opinion that means it is written in stone.
Right.
It is written in stone, but there are things the legislature could do that would not violate the constitutional provision to maybe make it less, I hate to even use the word, burdensome on people who make more than $1 million a year. What are some of those things?
I mean, that's the reason why we did the story.
I know.
We were wondering, and so, for example, you can't change the $1 million. It's a tax. It's a surtax on incomes over $1 million. Adds an extra 4%.
Right.
That can't change, and you can't change the annual income. But the legislature, if it wants to, it can go back and look at, how do we define annual income? Or they can look at certain abatements. They can look at, let's say, if you sell a house, right, and it's going to push you well into over the $1 million mark. But the legislature come back and said, the current exemption for a home sale is $500,000 for a couple.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll raise it to $800,000.
That they could do.
And so, but one of the things I found out is that there's no political will to do that because with Maura Healey supported question one. She's a Democrat. The House and Senate controlled by Democrats. So there'll be, if a Republican or anyone proposed legislation, right, to change the abatements or to exemptions, I don't think it would pass.
Well, the one thing that is being discussed, I can't remember, I think it was in your column. Did you quote Brad Jones, the Republican leader in the House?
Yes.
I mean, Republican leader of like 4 Republicans, whatever it is. Yes. I mean, there aren't many Republicans, which is an issue, I think, in this state. The notion of segregating, the two big issues in the campaign obviously were, is it going to drive people who make more than $1 million a year out of state? And by the way, the vast majority of homeowners who sell their house for more than $1 million won't pay an additional nickel for a variety of reasons, including the exemption. The second issue was, if we're voting to put the $1.2 to $2 billion a year that accrues into transportation and education? Will it be diverted to other purposes? The notion that Brad Jones, a Republican, raised, and I've spoken to actually a couple of Democratic state reps on Beacon Hill and senators about segregating the funds so that in a separate account so that the taxpayers can see this is where this money's going, here's how it's flowing out, and it is not in any way affecting, which was the intention of the ballot question, the pre-existing expenditures on both of those levels would really be an act of transparency in the state that is the least transparent, as we know, your former colleague, Todd Wallach, doing brilliant work, the least transparent state for legislature, judiciary, and executive branch. Don't you think it's really a fabulous idea?
Yes, and I do think there would be bipartisan support
I do too.
for that, and the legislature should do it, and Healy should support it. This is the only way, and there is precedent too. There's other instances where a tax is being collected. It's because usually a tax goes straight into the general fund, but there are other examples where I think maybe the gas tax.
Cigarette tax, they did 94 for a while, even though they eventually diverted it. But yeah.
But the
gas
idea
tax,
is that,
you're right.
gas tax, they would collect it. You would see how much accrues. You would see how it's spent.
You know, I'm sorry, go ahead, Marjorie.
Well, can we move on?
Let's do it to the T. Yeah.
Okay, before we move to the T, though, I just want to point out, this is from Anonymous in Shrewsbury about dogs at the office.
Yes.
She said, I love dogs, but a woman at my company brings her dog. This woman is the ultimate type A, driven workaholic. You'd think her dog would be trained within an inch of its life, but no, the motley cur jumps and slobbers, doesn't obey when she lamely tries to call. I want to see a dog school diploma before a dog can come to work. She says she needs to remain anonymous unless I get my head chewed off. What do you think, Shirley? Maybe that's true. We need to have the doggy daycare test?
Well, just like there are rules of rules for humans, there should be rules for dogs.
Absolutely.
By the way, just to give you an incentive to stick around till the end of the show, our final discussion today is going to be how you feel about bringing dogs to work.
That's right.
And I am going to out the coworker of ours at our old radio station that reported Marjorie to the boss when she brought her. Oh, yes, I am.
No, you're not. No, that would be bad.
So you write another column that the two most important issues that Maura Healey is going to be dealing with come January are transportation and housing. We'll put housing to the side for a moment. The choice of the new T director, obviously Poftak, the GM, is leaving on January 3rd. I mean, first of all, the millionaire's tax is going to make that job a little bit easier. We don't know how much will go to the T. Some will go to the T. Do you have any insight into what direction she's...
But hold on, before you get the insight, you point out something which I didn't realize. Charlie Baker had 5 GMs during his 2 terms. Only one of them, Frank DiPola, had transportation background, which is just startling.
Right.
But anyway.
So that's why the T perhaps is not as well run as it should be. And so the whole I made out that the most important hire for her, is finding the right general manager for the T. And Charlie Baker's been here for almost 8 years, and he's had 5 general managers. The very first one was a Patrick Holdover, Beverly Scott. She was the only one that actually had operational transit
she was a hot
experience.
ticket, remember?
She was unbelievable.
Did you
it's not her first rodeo.
Did you have her?
We had her
yeah, she's great.
Yeah, she would always say, it's not my first rodeo.
Yes. Bev Scott.
But she left us.
She did, and she had run Atlanta, she had run Sacramento, Rhode Island. She had come with significant transit experience. And I think that's what Maura Healey needs to look for. And it seems so basic, right?
But can I just say,
the common denominator, the schools and the T, all these endless leadership changes.
We have only 30 seconds. I think something that I hope Charlie Baker does not do, which you suggest he might, is pick an interim person from January 3rd to January 5th, which I think would really be a low rent kind of thing, don't you think?
Well, I think...
Why can't there just be whoever the number 2 is,
well, I think
he or she fills in till she picks the replacement?
As I pointed out, I think the number 2 is going to be the
interim. Okay.
Yeah.
By the way, my understanding, and I can't disclose my source, Maura Healey has said her goal on the T for the year number 1, no one jumps from the T into the Mystic River. And I think that is such an incredibly admirable goal.
Right. You got to watch out the red line of the Ponset River. That's the one to watch.
Yeah.
Nice to see you.
We want a fire-free T. It's not too much to ask. We've been speaking with Shirley Young. She's a business columnist for the Boston Globe. Up next, our food and policy expert Corby Kummer will talk about water insecurity in the United States. I had no idea it was such a big problem, and why the baguette is getting global recognition. Corby Kummer is next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library as we do every Tuesday and every Friday. And we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
It's not over yet. More smart conversation about.
One-time payouts and back raises and bonuses, and an additional day interrogation footage of a confession. We're at the center of day 4 in the capital murder trial of a former U.S. Border Patrol agent and suspected serial killer Juan David Ortiz. Texas Public Radio's Marian Navarro has more.
Jurors continued to view more of a 10-hour interrogation conducted by law enforcement agents on the day of Ortiz's arrest. Ortiz becomes visibly upset in the video and admits to interacting with two of the women. He said he did not plan the murder of victim Melissa Ramirez and said she, quote, mouthed off before he shot her in the head. Federico Calderon, a lead investigator who interrogated Ortiz, testified he admitted to the killings and disclosed the location of a fourth body, which investigators did not yet know about at the time. Ortiz's lawyer argued earlier this week the confession was coerced. I'm Mariana Navarro in San Antonio.
Wall Street has pulled up off earlier lows. The Dow right now is down 83 points. The Nasdaq is down 86. The S&P 500 down 20. This is NPR.
Good afternoon from the GBH Radio Newsroom in Boston. I'm Henry Santoro. A Harvard Law School professor is asking the federal judge who presided over the high-profile 2018 Harvard admissions trial to release currently sealed transcripts of courtroom discussions from those proceedings. In a court filing last month, Professor Jeannie Gerson, a constitutional law scholar, asked Massachusetts District Court Judge Allison Burroughs to unseal transcripts of sidebar discussions from that trial. Gerson wrote that she wants the documents unsealed for purposes of knowledge, transparency, and reporting about a case of great public importance. No word yet from the judge. Recreational cannabis sales have begun in Rhode Island. It's the 19th state in the nation to legalize and regulate recreational use, and the 5th state in New England. Here's GBH Radio's Mark Hers.
Sales come just 6 months after Governor Daniel McKee signed legislation legalizing recreational marijuana. The state says their implementation timeline has been the fastest in the Northeast. Massachusetts took 2 years to begin recreational sales after legalization. So far, 5 dispensaries are licensed in Rhode Island to sell to adults 21 and over. Maine, Vermont, and Connecticut have also legalized adult use, leaving New Hampshire now the only New England state not to have legalized. In Boston, I'm Mark Hers, GBH News 89.7.
In sports, the Celtics host the Heat at the Garden tonight. Mostly sunny upper 40s today. Lots of rain on tap tomorrow. High, though, about 60 degrees. It's 41 degrees outside our studios here in Brighton.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fidelity Wealth Management, working to help investors keep more of what they earn with tax-efficient strategies at fidelity.com/wealth. Investment minimums apply. Fidelity Brokerage Services, member NYSE.
I'm Henry Santoro, GBH News 89.7.
Mr. Browdy, I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting from the Boston Public Library as we do every Tuesday and every Friday, and we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. I think we also have a winner of our mug raffle, Jim.
For the first hour, because one's going to be
hour.
raffled if you're here in the second and third hour,
That's
too.
right. Her name is Karen Young.
Yes, she is.
But
Where
she
are
seems
you, Karen?
to have disappeared.
Oh, you're there.
She's here. Oh, good.
Can you do me a favor?
Here we go.
Hey, Karen. Karen, can you look a little more excited if you don't mind? Thank you. Appreciate that. Karen Young, congratulations. She actually looks pretty excited.
She looks pretty excited. We had to go through a lot of trouble to get these mugs, Jim. They were
We
hidden
did.
in the bowels of GBH, and you
They were in
managed to
my
find
trunk.
them, and they were in the trunk of Jim's car.
And
That's
by the
where
way,
they
again,
were.
we're giving one away in the next hour and one away. Marjorie's idea, sort of an early Christmas thing, the smug mug. So do that. One other thing, by the way, people who were at the library were lucky enough not only to be part of the raffle, to hear just a brief rehearsal of incredibly beautiful music by Boston Baroque.
Yes.
If you are not here and want to have a wonderful start to your weekend, join us in the 1 o'clock hour physically here and watch these incredibly talented people perform for us. In any case, speaking of talent, we're joined now via Zoom by Corby Kummer. Corby is the Executive Director of the Food and Society Policy Program at the Aspen Institute. He's a senior editor at The Atlantic and a senior lecturer at the Tufts Friedman School of Nutrition, Science, and Policy. Hello, Corby Kummer.
Hello, I'll take that segue anytime.
So, Corby Kummer, we've heard a lot about dirty water insecurity in the United States. Flint, Michigan was a horrible situation. Now we have Jackson, Mississippi, with the Department of Justice looking into their inability to supply clean drinking water there. I had no idea there could be as many as 60 million people, according to Mother Jones, that are facing water insecurity. So what is it and how big of a deal is this?
Boy, do I love this story. So it was originally conducted and written by the Food and Environmental Reporting Network, which And then Mother Jones ran it, so they do great work. They did great work during the pandemic on how many meat slaughterhouse workers were actually being killed by COVID. So they've now done this water insecurity. So it never occurred to me this was something. So food insecurity is now generally a screening question in many primary care offices, many hospital settings. Do you have enough to eat? Does your family worry about whether they will have enough to eat by the end of the month or in a week? And so this study, which says, okay, the official estimates might be between 1 and 2 million, but probably it's more than 60 million people. The simple question should be, do you drink your tap water? Is it potable and ample? Can you cook with it or use it to mix infant formula and cereal? Those are ways of teasing out these incredibly important questions because especially infant formula and cereal, those don't have the kill step of cooking and boiling. You know, we're all familiar with the whole dreaded boil water order.
Yes.
If there's a terrible risk of damage to the aquifer or something in Wellesley, where are the pumping stations where that's been a problem for either Boston or Cambridge, which have different water supplies? But this is just saying that many people, notoriously Flint, Michigan, where that became, an ongoing problem. There are so many more people who don't feel confident about drinking their tap water, worry about them. And that's the reason that the number one food bank request, also new information to me, is often bottled water.
By the way, speaking of Flint, if I may, that same piece says that people are spending as much as $1,000 a year on bottled water. And the most important contribution to this story, which I thought was huge, and you touched on it, both Corby and Marjorie, is it's hard to be food secure if you're water insecure for obvious reasons. You cook a lot of things with water. And the second thing, which to me was when Marjorie mentioned the number of as many as 60 million, everybody listening knows about the horror of Flint, Michigan, which you two talked about. Everybody knows about the horror of Jackson, Mississippi. One of the other horrors of Flint, Michigan is all the criminal charges against people like the governor on down have been either knocked out by juries or by appellate courts. I think they did commit crimes, frankly, from afar. This is going on all over the country. It's not just a phenomenon in high-profile places, but in places particularly where low-income people and people of color tend to have a huge part of the population. So I think it's a huge service that they... Did you know about this, by the way, beyond Jackson? You're obviously much better connected to these issues than Marjorie and I are, Corby. Did you know about the breadth of this before the Mother Jones piece?
Can I lie to continue impressing you? No, I didn't. And I'm really shocked by this. And there's now this whole water insecurity experience scale that will help with food insecurity. And one of the practical steps recommended in this piece would be the way there are so many great double value bucks and named after Gus Schumacher, who started in Massachusetts. There should be more initiatives to help SNAP recipients use SNAP benefits for bottled water and increase stretch the dollars they have to go toward bottled water.
Amen.
We're talking to our food man, Corby Kummer. So, Corby, you have enlightened us about expiration dates before, saying that a lot of them are bogus, and we can keep going, particularly with yogurt, which has been verified once again in this story in The Atlantic. But there's a little quote above this Atlantic piece saying, "When in doubt, throw it out. Just doesn't cut it anymore." Why not?
So there are so many good initiatives on this, including from Maine-owned Congresswoman Shelley Pingree, who actually floated a bill to get rid of expiration dates on food. So let's pull back. Expiration dates are generally an invention of manufacturers to say it's best by. We think that you, the retailer, should rotate your stock every month or so. It's often a way of making sure that they sell more product. It's simply a recommendation. It is not a danger. Almost the only danger is infant formula. As we were talking about, fresh water can go bad. Infant formula can be risky to an extremely vulnerable population. Infants, if it's beyond its sell-by dates, almost nothing else is actually dangerous beyond its sell-by date. One of the main points in this piece, a terrific woman named Dana Gunders, who's a pioneer in useful guides to how to tell whether or not your food is spoiled and expiration dates, don't worry about it, is. And Emily Broad-Lieb at Harvard's own Center for Health Policy, and Chilpy, is widely quoted in this piece as saying, it wouldn't actually kill you if you drank sour milk. And in fact, that's often a very good thing to put into your pancake batter because, as with buttermilk, it adds airiness and it raises it. It's a very good thing to have in baking. You don't need the kill step for almost everything in your refrigerator. And also, your nose is a really good guide. Yeah. If something smells really off, you generally know, but that's not so correlated to these expiration dates and sell-by dates. You just don't have to worry about them, and it results in an enormous amount of food unnecessarily thrown out. Let's give another local plug to the Daily Table, which began its business model by taking a short-coded or short-dated food, meaning there were only a week or two left on the suggested sell-by dates. Again, they are just manufacturers' suggestions, and they were so cheap because the wholesaler wouldn't have time within 2 weeks to get it into the warehouse, then get it into the individual retail outlets. So Daily Table could pick it up for a song. They still have a lot of food that they sell because of these so-called expiration dates.
Two things, Corby. One, I always forget the name, and he's terrific. The guy was one of the leaders of Trader Joe's who founded Daily Table.
Doug Rouse.
Doug Rouse, thank you. Sorry, I always forget about it. That is one. I'm going to ask you a stupid question, so why bother, Jim? Well, I can't control myself. The government could get involved in this. There's no regulation at all of expiration dates. So particularly for food insecure people who live and die by. I mean, I used to think until you told us those dates were legit. By the way, you can have my sour milk, but everything else I'm on board with. The government could mandate that expiration date or used by or whatever that expression is had to mean a specific thing, but they don't because they're captive of big agriculture. Is that the end of the story?
Well, the bills haven't passed both houses. So I remember that Shelley Pingree, during the Obama administration, had got, I think, the adoption, maybe even that House of Representatives passed a bill recommending that date labels had only best if used by or used by. So best if used by pointed out, okay, this is what we're trying to increase more sales by using. The other is used by for safety. And then some states like New York don't even require this on the labels at all. So right now it's state by state. Maybe if more initiatives and state laws pass, but I agree with you, it should be federal. It's New York and Tennessee. They don't require these labels at all. I think they should just be removed. Except for must use by in terms of infant formula and anything else actually dangerous.
We're talking to Corby Kummer.
Corby, the Globe did a big series about infighting in the Maine lobster business between some lobstermen who were trying to go ropeless because the fishing gear, the ropes, are what trap these right whales, which are shortly becoming extinct. And it was very, very nasty. There was a side that wanted absolutely no accommodation for the right whales. We're not going to do this non-rope gear. And the other side was saying, well, if we can get it paid for, because it's very expensive, we're happy to do it and not entangle the right whales. This is a long way of getting at the story about Whole Foods phasing out Maine lobsters, prompted by concern about the right whales. But I wondered if it was this big fight too between both sides of the fishing industry up there in Maine that's behind this.
It is a big fight. So the idea is the longer the rope and the more rope you use on lobster traps, the likelier it is that right whale's an extremely endangered species. There's apparently fewer than 350 of them left.
Yeah.
So every loss is really dangerous. So long ropes could trap them and kill them. So therefore, fisheries, lobster fisheries, including in Maine, according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's Marine Fisheries Service, do have to restrict the amount of rope and restrict lobstering in general for a certain part of the year, presumably when the stocks are most endangered or when they're breeding. But a district court in a lawsuit brought by these by environmental groups, this summer said that the rope rule fell short of its legal obligations to protect whales under the Marine Mammal Protection Act. And so Whole Foods, going by the Marine Stewardship Council, which is an independent national rating organization, not part of Maine, said, we agree with this, and there aren't enough safety checks in place for us to feel confident about Maine lobster fishery. Naturally, the governor of Maine is extremely angry about this, and the Maine lobster fisher people feel that they are caught between various factions telling them what to do and trying their best to adhere to these rules that will prevent their going on a redlining list by Seafood Watch or Marine Stewardship Council, which are these independent safety rating organizations. But the problem is, if they go onto those lists, then Whole Foods can decide we're taking that advice and we're just stopping buying and selling Maine seafood. So I don't know more about the whole Maine side of this, but Governor Janet Mills, who's a Democrat in Maine, is furious about this.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt you. If you want to learn a lot about it, David Abel from the Boston Globe did a film called Entangled.
Yes.
And the film,
so good.
It is heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking.
Factual and heartbreaking. It's called Entangled. But by the way, Janet Mills doesn't have to be that upset, because despite what Whole Foods did, obviously the message didn't make it to the White House. Here is the White House's executive chef, Chris Comerford, explaining the part of the menu for Joe Biden's state dinner with President Macron of France. Here it is.
We are featuring beautiful things from the land and the sea. We have some butter poached Maine lobster. That is dolloped with American Ocetra caviar from California whitefish sturgeon. It is also garnished with some celery crisp. That's actually one of our First Lady's favorite. Okay. And made sure that I put some extra in there.
She's not done. Go ahead.
As well, our lobstermen from Maine, who really have to work pretty hard because they had to ship 200 live lobsters to us yesterday morning to get it to this point.
And she went on to say, to hell with the right whale. I mean, that's essentially, isn't there a sort of a little bit of a disconnect? You know this woman, it sounds like. Yes?
No, I know of her.
Oh, okay. What do you think of that?
I think that she probably hasn't seen this controversy, and that her job is to elevate and promote U.S. harvested and U.S. grown products.
You're a good person.
In the first state dinner the Biden administration has mounted, and this is one of the best ingredients that come from the United States. So I think it's up to all of us to go back and read David Abel and try to inform ourselves, because so far it's only Whole Foods in places that decide they're going to listen to the Marine Stewardship Council and these independent rating agencies. It's not local seafood chains. It's not other large institutional buyers that do need to pay attention to it because they're not bound by law.
You know what I thought was a very nice touch? President Macron bought a copy of the movie that Joe and Jill Biden saw on their first date to the
is that really true?
Yes.
What was the movie?
It's a very old movie, but it's a French movie.
What is it?
A Man and a Woman.
Oh, I saw A Man and a Woman. Exactly.
With a new
that theme is going to go through our heads the rest of the day. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, no, it was
I think that was applause of ridicule, not support.
Well, I remember seeing that movie a million years ago, and I thought it was quite sexy, actually.
You think so?
It is sexy.
I did. He says at one point, when the waiter comes over.
Go ahead, do it.
Okay, the waiter comes over with the check, hands him the check, and the waiter says to the guy whose name I forget, Trinjanot or something.
Look at the sparkle.
John Louis Trinjanot.
Thank you very much. Says, sir, would you like anything else? And he says, yes. Can we get a room?
Woo.
I thought that was pretty wild when I was a little kid.
Margie's got a lilt in her step. So I would have to agree with whoever made this determination to build a memorial or something to the baguette. One of the great foods on the planet, speaking of President Macron, is the baguette. So what happened with the baguette is elevated to some special status by somebody. I know that really explains it well, but I know you can. What happened, Corby?
So UNESCO, which is the United Nations Culture Agency, often designates sites, places, cities as World Heritage Sites. So there's also its exalted intangible cultural heritage list. And the French boulangerie, the French baguette has gone on to this. It's significant for a number of reasons. It's highlighting, or anybody who thinks about the baguette and loves it as we do, knows that I think 400 family-owned bakeries a year are going out of business in France. This has been going on for quite a while. And that is because of national change and distribution chains, flight from small villages to cities that rob the market. And also, baguettes were subsidized by the state, the price, until the early 1980s, so that bakers knew that they had a sort of guild and trade protected price, and they could always make a living. Now inflation has greatly driven up the cost of flour, and so the baguette is endangered, especially the idea of local artisan bakeries, because they can't afford the labor and they can't afford inflation prices, and there's been flight to cities. So this is a huge drain of talent, and there have been national government competitions for the baguette competition. I think Craig Ponton is just the name I happen to remember of an American baker who went and competed in France for the International Baguette Contest. The winner of this gets a contract with Macron's Élysée Palace to supply them for a year. So they're trying to create a national constituency for this endangered baguette. So it's great to start thinking about what makes a really great baguette and trying to preserve it with this World Heritage endangered designation. But one of the really interesting facts of this is I certainly knew that white flour was only for the rich until really the 1800s and 1900s, the Industrial Revolution. But the baguette wasn't particularly associated with France until Americans after World War I started flooding in and made this part of the national symbol. And also, it was only after World War II that most French people could afford something they would have to replace every day because they go stale really fast.
They do.
Unlike most artisan bakeries, which had big sourdough loaves that could really last for a week.
And by the way, a lot of the great small baguette places make them several times a day to keep them fresh. Now, Marjorie, if you can close your ears, because I don't want to be ridiculed. One of the great joys in life is if you're in a small town in France. Go ahead, Marjorie.
Small town in France.
Okay, I know. Oh, Jim was in a small town in France.
familiar with many of them.
Okay, is there anything
Not
better?
to mention his familiarity with the Champs-Élysées.
Okay, fine, thank you.
Where he sits and drinks his coffee, sips his espresso.
It's actually Rue Claire, but thank you very much.
Rue Claire,
It is
sorry.
Rue Claire, thank you. But is there anything better than being in a small town in France and you smell, as you're walking down a little tiny street, the baguettes baking in an oven somewhere, and the smell, I can't do this.
You know what it is, Jim?
Look away, please.
You know what it is?
Directing, when the smell draws you like a magnet to the, what is it called, boulangerie? Is that how you're supposed to, boulangerie?
That's how it just
that was beautiful. How would you
you.
describe it in one adjective, Jim?
Otherworldly. Otherworldly, yes,
Otherworldly,
that's right. Do you not like baguettes?
I love baguettes.
Okay, fine. That's the end of the
baguettes
discussion.
Are great. Yep.
Okay, before you go, we have one quick question.
Yep.
Want to call in your legal knowledge. As you know, someone has filed a class action against Velveeta because it says you can make their macaroni and cheese in 3.5 minutes. Apparently, the plaintiff thinks you cannot. Marjorie and I wanted to file a friend of the court brief. How do we do that? Because we're appalled, too. Do you have any ideas?
That's outrageous. It
what
really
do you think,
is.
Corby? Quickly.
Oh, I think that this is an absolutely ludicrous lawsuit against Kraft.
Get rid of him.
Claiming 3.5 minutes because that's the amount of time in the microwave and they don't specify the resting time.
Yeah.
To thicken the sauce. I think everybody should be making it at home. I want to plug clear flour baguettes because everybody needs to go and have
it's from
clear
a
flour
fan of
baguette.
clear flour.
They're
baguettes.
wonderful. They're in Brookline.
And you know what? You should have that as your carb tonight instead of Kraft mac and cheese.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Corby,
Corby
it's
Kummer.
wonderful to see you as always. Thank you.
As always.
Corby Kummer is Executive Director of the Food
He
and
is.
Society
That
Policy
is
Program
true.
at the Aspen Institute. He's a Senior Editor at Well at the Atlantic and a Senior Lecturer at the Tufts Friedman School of Nutrition Science and Policy. Thank you very much, Corby Kummer.
Corby.
Always great to see you. Up next, for our Kate and Will discussion, it's our media maven, Sue O'Connell, with her own thoughts, of course, on William and Kate, plus the latest on Elon Musk's monkey mutilating project, Neuralink. That is next on Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
It's now standard repertoire around Christmas in the United States, but 100 years ago, this piece of music was first introduced to Americans by a traveling choir from Ukraine.
How can we assert Ukrainian identity around the world at a time when people are just becoming conscious that we are a nation?
The history of Carol of the Bells, this afternoon on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you and the University of Massachusetts Amherst Mount Ida campus in Newton, connecting students and employers in Greater Boston and offering on-campus graduate and pre-college programs. Learn more at umass.edu/MIC. And MSI United States. Their providers are committed to bringing contraception, reproductive health care, and all the opportunity that comes with choice to women in the most remote parts of the world. More at msiunitedstates.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marge Regan and Jim Browdy. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Here to take on the social norms and abnormalities of the day's media movement. Sue O'Connell. Sue is the co-publisher of Bay Windows and South End News, a contributor to Current on NBCLX and NECN. Hello, Sue O'Connell.
Good day. Good day. Oh, look at that, Spud. No cousins are here, and they're clapping anyway.
I find that hard to believe.
Well,
okay.
Sue O'Connell, let's get to the big story of the week. Of course, that
By the way,
would be
you two have 3 minutes. We're not going to do this for
Billie
20 minutes.
Eilish
I'm
is in
telling you
town.
right
That's
now.
the story,
I'm
right?
serious.
Billie Eilish is in
We're
town.
not doing
Will and
20
Kate,
minutes.
of course, we're here at the Celtics, and they're going to do the Earthshot. They're going to be providing over that, or I should say, proceeding over that, or whatever they're going to be doing.
Presiding.
Thank you. Whatever they're doing. What do you think? I mean, there's a lot of controversy. First of all,
what do you think?
Harry and Meghan have released the trailer of their Netflix documentary.
We have it.
Let's look at it.
Okay, let's go.
Here it is. Here's the trailer. Coincidentally,
Just a coincidence.
being released at the exact same time that Will and Kate are in town. Here it is.
No one sees what's happening behind closed doors. I had to do everything I could to protect my family.
Uh-oh.
Okay. Yep. The question is, did they do this intentionally to sabotage and take attention away from the visit here in Boston?
So I think Netflix did it intentionally. I mean, I think that if I were in the marketing department of Netflix, I would be crazy if I didn't do it to capitalize on it to get more publicity. At the same time, I wouldn't put it past Meghan Markle to do it. And I think that Olivia Wilde and Meghan Markle should open their own PR agency because they're so good at this, getting news about things we don't really care about sometimes. It's like the Ab Fab, if you remember Absolutely Fabulous. PR, sweetie. It's all about PR,
It's all about
sweetie.
PR, that's right.
Sweetie. So, who knows?
Now,
who cares?
The other big question, which is raised by Beth
Jim's point.
Teitel in the Boston Globe,
Yes.
is how is it that Kate Middleton can
amazing.
look absolutely thrilled to meet everybody? Governor Baker, some little lady.
I love how Beth Teitel made it seem like it was really an effort to look thrilling to meet Governor Baker. I mean, I usually put on a nice smile when I see him, although, he never seems thrilled to talk to me.
Yeah.
Listen, she has one job, right?
Yeah.
And that's to look like she's happy to be there. So, I think for the amount of money that she's getting paid, I think that she can certainly look good.
What is she getting paid?
I don't know, but,
It's a lot,
more than
whatever
we're
it is.
getting paid.
No, I
That's
understand.
Oh, my God.
I just want. Did you actually see Will and Kate? I understand that you may have
Shirley
gotten a glimpse
did.
of them.
Oh, no.
Shirley
I thought it was Sue.
I would not leave the house. I just want to be clear. As soon as it started raining, unless I had some sort of inn, there's no way I'm going to stand out in the rain.
Well, let me
to
tell
see
you
anyone.
something, by the way. A myth. I'm going to dispel a myth.
Okay.
Yesterday, I'm listening to the radio show, and they're talking about, we were told by Hannah Jones, who runs Earthshot, that we're not supposed to call them Will and Kate. My Prince and Princess Will and Kate.
Why, are you going to go to jail? Is there a First Amendment issue? Is something going to happen?
The big issue
Wait a minute,
is
we kicked
apparently
them out. I just want to point out
we
so
did.
that if we want to call them Will and Kate, we're going to call
You
them
don't
Will
have
and
to
Kate.
say Your Royal
participating
Highness or
in
anything
this.
like
In
that.
any case, the big controversy in Somerville is people were absolutely out of their minds because you couldn't get to Market Basket.
Right.
So I hear them talking about on the radio yesterday. In fact, Jared is right there, one of the co-hosts yesterday with Andrew Cabral. And Where was I? On my honor, the second they were talking about it, I was driving into Market Basket. You couldn't go into the entrance. That was blocked off.
Right.
But you could. You just look around and you go into the exit and everything was totally fine. Now, having said that...
Don't start breaking traffic laws
now
again, okay? Let's not go through that again.
Can I say one thing?
That's what Jim did when the Prime Minister was here, you know.
That was probably a long time.
He got almost was arrested by the state police.
I was actually
Who could blame
arrested
them?
by the state police. And then Marjorie was what's the kind of witness? A hostile witness at my trial. That is honest to God true. I go on trial in Dorchester Court.
Why would you call her for help?
Because she was there and saw what happened.
But my point, why would you call her to testify?
If you're going to say I wanted you to lie,
me to lie.
I
Yes,
did not.
Yes, you did.
Okay, I'm going to take a deep breath and move ahead. You know I'm not a fan of the monarchy for a lot
Jim
of
was
reasons.
driving the wrong way down Morrissey Boulevard.
That is true, by the way, but there's a good reason for it, which we will not discuss today.
He was a very important man who was stuck in traffic. The rest of us were all stuck in traffic,
Anyway,
too.
he had
There
to
were
get to Market
hundreds
Basket
of us.
yesterday, and the prince and princess ran
As I
away.
was saying,
Okay.
I'm not big fans of the monarchy for all the reasons we talked about when Queen Elizabeth died, even though we were respectful, I think, to the Queen upon her death. However, we had Hannah Jones on the other day, who I mentioned, and the head of the JFK Library. Hannah is the head of the Earshot Prize. She's the CEO, and she's talking about Prince William, guiding questions in creating the prize. Here's a little bit of what Hannah had to say.
How can we spotlight the incredible innovations that are happening around the world? How can we help to scale those innovations? And in doing so, how can we inspire urgency but also optimism in people around the world so that we all feel that we have something we can do to make a change and fix our climate?
And she said specifically that the prince was totally hands-on here. We know that King Charles really cares about the environment. Is that the thing? My criticism of the monarchy is rooted in X, Y, and Z. And Z is they don't do anything. Their X and Y are actually even more serious. He's doing something on maybe the most important issue on the planet. And when somebody with his profile and her profile, the princess, get involved in something that is getting national attention here, and I think a decent amount of international attention, it's yet another several million eyes and ears focused on climate change.
Absolutely.
So I have to give it to them for doing this thing. It's a great thing.
Listen, in the least, they are huge international celebrities. In the least, right? Regardless of
but that doesn't do anything.
No, but it does raise the issue of climate change when you're talking about the importance of, especially for Boston and for Massachusetts and the coastal cities, what's going to happen to us. It certainly brings the conversation. And listen, I also, don't want to gloss over, we're kidding around about Great Britain and everything, but you've got Michelle Wu, whose ancestors, Maura Healey's ancestors, Charlie Baker's ancestors, and, the city of Boston's long history. And here we are not that long as history marches now, all sort of working together to try and save the planet. And I think that's a positive spin.
We're talking to Sue O'Connell.
So let's talk about the same-sex marriage bill. I'm coughing here. Jonathan Capehart wrote a great piece in the Washington Post. Excuse me.
Want me to do this while you're catching your breath?
I'll just finish basically not saying this was a big deal. He was almost insulted.
Yeah, he was. I mean, listen, there's been a challenge here with the same-sex marriage protection that was passed that also includes interracial marriages. And it's not a big wall, it's a bit of a firewall. The fact that we even have to have it speaks volumes as to where we are. A reminder that same-sex marriage, the road to marriage equality, pretty much started in the 1970s. And it was done by towns and cities. It was done by domestic partnership. It was done by corporations recognizing couples. It was done by voters voting directly on it. It was done by courts. It was done by lawmakers. It's a tapestry of a right that has it's got every single aspect of involvement from the voters and the citizens in it. And because of Clarence Thomas's comments and because of revoking Roe v. Wade, it now is suddenly exposed. So you would think that just the way that the right was written would be enough for us to be protected, but it's not. So now we have this Band-Aid to put out there to protect the right in states where it was already there. Remember, when something passes, like marriage equality happens, the Defense of Marriage Acts don't go off the books. We learned that with Roe v. Wade. if they had abortion laws on the books, they immediately could be reactivated. There's plenty of states that have laws on the books that are overwritten because of the same-sex marriage rights. So, no, it's not perfect. It's insulting that it has to happen, but I think this is where we are right now, where if we want to double down on our rights, we have to pass legislation.
Well, let me just add the one thing you said. It doesn't just protect it in the state in which the marriage is legal. It protects it in a state where it's not legal.
If you move there
from a state where it is legal.
Which was kind of where we were, before we had the federal.
I mean, objective. If you don't mention what you mentioned, which is that Clarence Thomas made it clear that Obergefell, the whole ball of wax, is at great risk because he is the de facto Chief Justice. I think most of us would agree right now in that dissent. So in the abstract, is Capehart right? And I admire him, by the way, in general. Is he right that it's not, everything? Yes, but as you said, it's a firewall. I mean, the reality is the Supreme Court is threatening a right that people in this country were given a bunch of years ago, long overdue, but it's there. This is the best. It's politics being the art of the possible. They did something, and I think the fact that they were able to. We never say a good word about Susan Collins, so let's say it. Collins helped round up 11 Republican colleagues so they could pass the filibuster threshold, 61, 62.
So it's a bipartisan success to.
Imperfect, as you say, but huge considering when a 62 members of Congress, I think it was 61 yesterday for some reason, 62 members of the Senate, is so fractious on everything, votes for anything to protect the rights of any vulnerable population. It's a big step in the right direction. There need to be more big steps.
And we're hoping that Mitch McConnell and his wife Elaine Chao go into some marriage counseling because he voted against it. Of course, it was also, as we said, an interracial protection. He is in an interracial marriage, but he voted against it. So there might be something going on at home there. I don't know.
Can you imagine? By the way, the only
I can't.
I can't even. Let's not even.
Okay, let's move on back to the Royals.
Let's move on.
Before
we get back to the Royals, Biden and the Democratic National Committee want to change the order of primaries in the United States, making South Carolina, where Biden cleaned up big time, the first primary state, followed by Nevada and New Hampshire. Georgia, and then Michigan. Iowa seems to be pretty much X'd out here. What do you think?
Well, we've been talking, how often do we talk about this? We talk about this all the time, except now it actually seems like there's been a meeting. Remember, the parties pick when the presidential primaries are. The government doesn't do it. The states don't do it, although state of New Hampshire has in their constitution a law. I'm not sure.
Can you check that? Thanks.
They have a requirement that they be the first in the nation primary. I don't know what that means. Iowa is a caucus, which is... I've been covering this for my entire adult life. I still can't explain to you how the caucus works, except...
Plus, it was a disaster 2 years ago.
Yeah, they couldn't even count the 10 votes that they had. Beside the fact that as much as we love New Hampshire, and we love the revenue that comes into our region and into our media outlets from the ads that come, it's a very, very white state, as is Iowa. So... I understand the Democrats. I believe they also have to get the Republican Party to sign off on this as well. No, they don't. They can do it separately.
Rules, yeah.
So, this is an effort to get a more diverse representation so that you actually get a candidate who represents what you think your party and the general public would vote for.
You know what I admire about? Well, I admire a lot of things about this proposal. Let's just stay on New Hampshire. By the way, we have a selfish interest. All three of us go out for a week.
It's a blast.
Every 4 years.
We go to that bar. We have beer.
It can't be more fun.
Who's everybody in that bar.
We follow everyone around.
Well, also, I think people know you're in the lobby of the main hotel. Every candidate who wants to be president of the United States, including Donald Trump, walks by. You get to talk to almost everybody.
Get to ride the elevator with
Remember seeing as a prediction
Mitchell?
of what was going to happen? Remember Jeb Bush kind of standing outside
by himself.
That was funny.
All by himself in the snow.
But can I say two things about this? One, to give some statistics. It's not just that it's not diverse. 92% white, only 2% black. You know how big the largest city is in New Hampshire?
So that would be Manchester.
How big?
Oh, gosh, 38,000?
Same size as Cambridge, 112,000 people. That's not a major city. Major cities are a critical piece. And by the way, they wouldn't dump Nevada. They just move it down a little. Number two, what is number two? Number two. I forget what number two is. Oh, It takes a lot of courage on the part of the Democrats to do this, because New Hampshire, I think it only has 3 electoral votes. Am I right about that? 3,
Yes.
I think. But it's a critical state, and it's a state that can go either way. There can be a lot of angry New Hampshire voters who are probably more likely to vote Republican if
the Democrats move. But
well,
then
it's a big money maker up there for them too. All the media.
Well, it's like
descending,
spring
all
training.
Yeah.
It's the same argument as spring
Candidates
training.
descending.
Yeah.
It's absolutely packed up there all the time in all the bars and
Here
everything.
it is from the
We
Boston
keep coming back to the bars, Marjorie and I.
Here's the, by the way, the bar is, it's
a great bar.
It is fabulous up there. Here is from the Boston Globe. Thank you, Jamie, our colleague. Under New Hampshire's statute, not constitution, the state will always hold the nation's first presidential primary. The question is whether the primary is held on a date the party allows, whatever that means. If not, any delegates earned in the, I don't have any idea what that means.
See, exactly.
Their statute says,
I read it before I came on.
So,
I don't know what it means.
I don't think they can declare themselves.
No, I think
forevermore,
what the
can
Secretary of State, who I think has been there like 300 years, he's the longest serving Secretary of State in America. I believe him. I think he's still there. What he does is whenever anybody moves up a primary, he moves it up to the prior week. So the primary could be tomorrow if necessary. So I guess whatever the Democrats, but the question then, which we are totally unprepared to answer, is if the party itself says, maybe that's what that means. If the party itself says, we're moving you down to 3 and you unilaterally, you New Hampshire, move it up to 1, the delegates may not count.
Right.
They may be
They
illegitimate.
can decide the delegates.
Jamie's
Very
saying
good.
that's what the point of the Globe
Jim
was.
has a law degree.
No, actually,
He does have a law
Jamie
degree.
does not have a law degree, and he understood it, and I did not.
Okay.
We're going to sue. By the way, it's not final yet, but it is something the Democrats
We'll
are
be talking
seriously
about a lot
talking
about this.
So some very depressing news in our business, journalism business.
Oh my gosh.
CNN is laying off a bunch of people. They lag behind MSNBC and Fox in the ratings. NPR, which is of course we're affiliated with here, Boston Public Radio, is imposing a near freeze. Thank God no layoffs as of yet, Jim.
As far as
Keep
we
our
know.
fingers crossed on that. And the Washington Post is ending its Sunday magazine, which is rather sad. I mean, the Boston Globe still has a Sunday magazine. It's thin. The New York Times has a great Sunday magazine every week.
Globe
Sometimes they
Sunday
have-
magazine's good too. It is thin, but it's a high quality magazine.
It's high quality, but that's because Jim used to write for the Globe.
No, it is
magazine.
not. It is a
That's why he says
high-quality
that.
magazine.
It's very thin.
They
But then-
the Post also let go Pulitzer Prize-winning dance critic, the only full-time
I
dance
didn't know
critic
that.
that was in the United States writing. So, look,
owned by Jeff Bezos, by the way.
Right.
Couldn't he throw a little bit more money towards the Washington Post?
He could, but I think that the goal of the broadcast and print and journalism is to stay in business right now, right? And certainly Bezos or somebody else can throw money at it, but it's got to be an entity that works. And we are now coming off of the pandemic, which changed everything, right? And we also are coming off a decrease in spending and advertising in traditional media, like CNN and like in newspapers and like in newspapers' websites. And digital is a lot cheaper. I know this is the part that's kind of hard to believe. We still own Bay Windows and South End News, and we still print them, and we have a website, and it's still much more profitable for us to print our newspapers than it is for us to get ads on a website. And that's true for all of digital. And in our experience here, well, you can listen to us on the radio, you can go to the website and download the podcast, you can watch us on YouTube. How do you make money on that, right? So how do the advertisers know where to go to get the most people? This obviously is not an advertising situation, but it's the same thing. CNN had to make that hard decision to cut back on the streaming service that they had because
in other
they
words,
weren't-
eliminated after 1 month and
Right.
$100 million.
because they had no idea where the revenue was going to come, where the advertisers were going to come to support that. So I think we're at this moment. It's not just about the advertising and where we are. It's also about where the audience is and how you monetize the audience to make money to pay for things.
Yeah, wait, I want to mention the one outlier here. You mentioned NPR with the freeze.
Right.
CNN laying off tons and tons of people.
Part of it
including
is the Ukraine
people
coverage.
how expensive it is.
Yes,
But it's not just
which is
that.
very
Discovery,
important.
which owns them, wants a smaller operation. Losing somebody like Preet Bharara, who's not on as much as he was, and he's on that list, is horrible. In any case, Post Magazine, there's a newspaper in town that hasn't done any of these things. And for, people take pot shots here and there to John and Linda Henry. They've done pretty good stewardship of a pretty important, maybe the most important regional
Right, but look how
newspaper
they've done it
in
too.
America.
They've done it by doing events, right? They have done it by pushing the subscriber idea for BostonGlobe.com.
Well, one of the biggest digital subscription rises of any newspaper in America.
Right,
actually.
and that was a lot of work that they have put into to get that, to make sure that they can sell the paid advertisers.
They still have investigative work at the Globe, and people don't realize how
That's a great
expensive it is. They talk about the Spotlight team, that has done and covered so many horrible things, or the efforts to look at police corruption here, or the MBTA. These things take days and
And
days.
they have
That's why
expanded-
people should see that movie, she said.
Right.
Because it
To
shows
see how
two
hard it
reporters
is.
in action. And and I don't think people have any idea how hard it is to go out and get these stories, and how important it is to be right and accurate.
But all that costs money,
It
right?
costs money.
And when you talk about pushing out on social media, whether you're on Twitter or Facebook, you need to have departments to do that. It's like, everyone always says, we have the website now, you might be able to publish everything. Well, we need a website manager to do that. So the expenses have grown, the revenue has decreased, the choices for advertisers has exponentially grown. And, to talk about the Globe's success, they also expanded some digital coverage to Rhode Island, which helps them to get eyeballs.
Because the Providence Journal has been so decimated.
Right, exactly. So what does that say for the Providence Journal?
I know, it used to be a great newspaper.
So it's just, I think we're in an inflection point right now as to what the future of media is going to look like, and where the money to pay us all is going to come from.
By the way, I should say, she said it's about the two New York Times reporters who nailed Harvey Weinstein, along with Ronan Farrow, that led to the Me Too
Well, it's
movement.
not about Ronan Farrow.
Well, no, they also. He was
Yeah.
involved in the reporting. I was giving him credit too.
He was brilliant. We only have 2 minutes left, and I don't understand the complaint. I'm talking to Marjorie about Neuralink this morning.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, who wouldn't want a company run by Elon Musk to connect their brain to a computer? I mean, what is wrong with people? I mean, I'm going to be first in line.
In your brain.
So how is this going to work? He puts a chip in your head, and he announced this on November 30th. He puts a chip in your head, and it connects to your laptop? Is that what this is?
Yeah,
Not to mention the torturing monkeys part.
Well, you know what, the torturing
that's
monkeys.
a good point.
That's a good point, but how many of you had a turkey sandwich today? I mean, I'm just saying, you're having a turkey sandwich right now. See, so
Jamie is,
I feel
actually.
bad for the animals, but this is where we are. But I think there's already science done that is helping people who are paraplegic or have other neurological issues, to help them to move things with their brain, actually move.
Was that what he intends, or he intends
I don't know what
something
he
more
intends.
devious?
I'm just so tired of talking about Elon Musk. I got to tell you, I had a dream about him last night. That's how bad it
really?
is. I just don't want to talk about Elon Musk
Was
anymore.
he trying to put a chip in your brain?
I don't know what he's trying
You
to
see,
do.
he suspended, amazingly,
Yeah.
Kanye West.
Well, what do you mean? I mean, this is after what he did, we're amazed he just...
He does a swastika
with
and a Star of David. It's just grotesque.
Yeah, he does. Kanye West does, and that gets him. And then he allegedly, according to Ye, had text messages with Elon, basically saying, "What's the problem? I thought it was free speech." Yeah, Elon Musk is. I always wanted to live in a Marvel movie, but I thought there'd be more heroes than villains, and he just seems to be turning out to be. I don't know what he is. So.
Are you still on Twitter?
I am still on Twitter. I'm staying on Twitter. I'm using it less. I feel like he ruined Twitter for me. I am so... I'm not kidding. I'm so unhappy about what he has done, his impact has done to Twitter, and I just don't know where I'm going to go.
Well, the latest updates on Kate and Willow, of course, are from Twitter. Are they not?
Actually,
no, they're
they
from you,
tweeted.
Marjorie.
They tweeted their own thing. They have a thing. They have a Twitter account where they tweet videos of him going to the Celtics game, sitting next to Healy
I know.
and Wu.
And they weren't in a skybox either. They're right down there on the floor.
Well, you want to be seen with the people.
I guess that's
Exactly.
The people on the floor in the front row seats.
Speaking of scene, we're always glad when you're seen. Nice to see you, Sue
Okay,
O'Connell.
see you, Maven Sue O'Connell. Thank you very much for being here. Our media maven, Sue O'Connell. Woo! Co-publisher of Bay Windows and South End News, contributor to Current on NBC, LX, and
You know what's great
NECN?
about this, by the way? Look at the look on Jared's face. I know what Jared's saying to himself. People just cheered wildly for Sue.
We're going to cheer
What
wildly
happens
for
when I
you.
come
That's
up
right.
here and nobody applauds?
We're going to applaud.
Keep that in mind, everybody,
Okay.
please. Be kind.
After a quick break, GBH Executive Arts Editor joins us
Look at him
to talk
turn red.
about a New York Times profile of the woman blessed with the job of dusting all those bits and pits on Michelangelo's grand nude, David. We're going to hear all about that. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. Do you going to tell people about these mugs?
Well, no, I think they know. This hour and the last hour, we're raffling off a mug, and Fernando has spoken to people. You take a little number.
Okay.
And just like Karen, right? Karen's gone, but Karen won. There she is. Won a mug in the first hour. There's another one this hour, another one in the last hour.
If you haven't seen
in
the
the
mug,
spirit of Christmas.
the expression on Jim's face, which is why we call it the smug mug,
Thank
is
you,
really,
Margaret. Appreciate
is really
that.
not to be
Thank
missed.
you.
The Boston City Council wants to lower the voting age to 16 for municipal elections. Could it happen, and should it? I'm Adam Riley. Tonight on Talking Politics, we'll weigh the pros and cons and hear from Councilor Julia Mejia, a driving force behind the push. Plus, we'll dig into what we know and what we don't about how Governor-elect Maura Healey plans to do her new job. All that on Talking Politics, tonight at 7 on GBH2 and online at gbhnews.org.
Support for GBH comes from you. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan. Always Health Partners is now Mass General Brigham Health Plan, providing the same plans, coverage, and a broad network of doctors. You can follow Mass General Brigham Health Plan on social at MGB Health Plan. And the Bach Center, presenting the New England premiere of 'Twas the Night Before by Cirque du Soleil, an acrobatic retelling of a classic tale, playing at the Bach Center Wang Theater November 25th through December 11th. Tickets at bachcenter.org.
Trusted. Local. News. You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. In about 20 minutes, you're going to hear from Boston Baroque. And if you're in the neighborhood, not here, get here. You're going to want to listen to him. And if you're at home or at work, you'll hear him too. We're joined first, though, by Jared Bowen, Executive Arts Editor here at GBH, host of Open Studios, which airs Friday nights at 8:30 on GBH2. Hello, Jared Bowen.
It's great to
Thank you. Thank you.
Nice applause. Thank you.
Okay, Jared Bowen. So let's start with an intriguing story by the New York Times. Who would have thought we'd ever see this? But it's an extensive discussion of the job of the person who dusts the massive nude of Michelangelo's
So we're going to go right there.
David. We're going to go right there.
Did you know Marjorie would? What? Can we put the photograph up for people here? And there he is.
There he is.
Okay.
There he is.
And there's the dusting.
What is he, about 20 feet high?
17.
17 feet high. Okay. So how is this done, Jared?
He's a very tall, beautiful man. A little history lesson done in the early 1500s, carved out of one block of marble by Michelangelo. And, of course, he has to be kept up. So to
speak.
Marjorie.
This is really a bad idea, by the way.
This is for
really a bad idea.
Do we just submit the resignation letters now?
Go ahead, Jared.
Before the segment, and so they take photographs so they can get a microscopic view to see where he needs attention, and then they take a brush with synthetic bristles, and with a little vacuum, they dust the David.
Can I tell you, Marjorie, you and I don't belong on the radio.
Here's what.
We are so low rent.
But
Do you think Jared thought what we thought when he first saw the duster?
Yes, I'm sure he did, actually.
Maybe
I want to say so.
I was
but
thinking,
here's
isn't
the thing.
conservation fascinating?
Here's the thing I find fascinating. Going to your editor at the New York Times and saying, I think we need to do a story on the person that dusts off
great story.
David. This whole thing about this woman and the procedure, I don't think this has ever been written before. It's groundbreaking.
But she doesn't just dust. She keeps up
vacuums
in all kinds of ways, essentially all the art that's
all
around
through that
him.
museum, which is an extraordinary museum in Florence, and that's where you see it was the museum. The space was built just for the David to accommodate him, and I think it's fascinating what she does because she talks about in the piece how she's become so attuned to him, and she can actually see the little chisel marks where know that Michelangelo sculpted this extraordinary figure out of the marble.
And there are spider webs, Jim, among the sculpted locks of David's hair, which she also has to get out with a little vacuum, right?
Her little
vacuum or a little duster.
Yeah. She does it 6 times a year. You should read the story. It is great, and it's great about her and the whole art that they're doing. But the thing you mentioned at first, I feel almost like a little kid about this. Can you imagine this? 17 feet, this incredibly beautiful thing out of one piece of stone. I mean, it is amazing.
Well, and you look at it, it looks like he would have spent his lifetime on it, not like the Sistine Chapel
How long did
or something,
it take him?
But it was only a few years.
Really?
Yeah.
And I always like to mention, because I got a chance to see this when I was young, when you walk down that hallway to see the David, along the hallway on either side are these big, huge blocks of, what kind of, do they use marble? I don't even know.
He's marble. I can't remember the others.
Where you see people kind of half emerging out of the rock, these kind of unfinished sculptures, and you think, incredible. I mean, he lived to what, 84 or something like that? But
you get such a sense of the brain, and this is why I'm always so fascinated about artists, because of the way they think and they see differently from the rest of us, that they can see this. I mean, I just can't even comprehend doing this, and he obviously had this extraordinary vision for it.
Yeah.
So I had.
What do you think of the David overall, Jim?
Okay, fine. I haven't thought of this topic, this angle in this till you said we've discussed AI art for a second. So I assume in the not too distant future, you can put that up one more time? I would assume at some point that a machine could do something that is a carbon copy of what Michelangelo spent, whatever you said, 3 years doing. So what's your reaction to that?
Well, it's funny that you say this, because as I was thinking about this, and as I was thinking about the conservator talking about how she sees those little chisel marks and feels the chisel marks as she's cleaning, I was thinking this is something you would never have with AI, because it would just be this pure rendition, without hand, without emotion, without the soul of the artist, essentially. And I know I'm being a little ethereal here.
No, I'm with you.
But you would get none of that, because it would just be an algorithm that's presenting this to you, and you literally could not feel it.
Talking to Jared Bowen.
So Jared Bowen, there's a lot of talk about countries that invaded other countries having to return the art to the countries that they invaded. And there's a big debate now between Egypt and Great Britain about the Rosetta Stone. But after reading these stories, I can kind of see both sides. Am I wrong?
Well, this is a tough one, and it's coming up more and more as developing nations that had objects taken from them, or there was some sort of legal transaction, and this is what's being meted out here, now have the fortitude, they have the ability and the strength and the might, and then the infrastructure, museums with which to claim these artifacts that have been taken. So the story here is that the Rosetta Stone, and I'll give the same little history lesson. Napoleonic French were in Egypt. They discovered the Rosetta Stone, which, with its language in Greek and hieroglyphics, they were able to do this translation. Thus, the Rosetta Stone that we talk about today was this avenue for understanding. 2 years later, the British come in. French surrender to them, so the British take the Rosetta Stone, and it now resides at the British Museum. And on this 200th anniversary of the decoding, of the deciphering of the Rosetta Stone, there is an argument being made by the Egyptians that it's time for it to go back. We've seen this also with the British Museum and many other museums around the world with the Elgin marbles, which were on the Parthenon and ended up in the British Museum, and Greece wants those back.
And all those that we talked to you about, going back to Nigeria, those sculptures.
The Benin sculptures,
Benin, right,
the bronzes.
Yeah.
And so this becomes a difficult task for museums, because right now they're trying to rely on what were the circumstances of the time. You're talking about 200 years ago, and was there a representative of the government at the time, of present-day Egypt, who signed off on this? The British Museum is saying yes, there was a representative who allowed this to happen. They argue the same to some degree with the Elgin marbles. The other argument that's often been made is that if you have artifacts like these in the British Museum, it's a solid institution. You know they're going to be well cared for. It's kind of a crossroads of the world. It's easy access so that people can go visit them. In the case of the Elgin marbles, you have the beautiful museum at the base of the Acropolis. So I believe that the Elgin marbles should go back to Greece at this point, because they have this glorious museum that literally looks up. You can look up through the glass ceiling to the Acropolis.
So neat.
It's gorgeous.
By the way, that argument is also made by the Wall Street Journal about the Rosetta Stone. That does nothing for me.
So,
go ahead.
But the difference with the Egyptian Museum is, first of all, they've been delayed at opening the Grand Egyptian Museum for years and years and years. We learned a few years ago that when the King Tut mask was broken, they literally superglued his beard back on. That's not what conservatives do, is superglue. So the argument is this is not the time for this to go back, because...
So the conquering nation should decide, because we are more able to display this appropriately to the world, that we will keep it, because that country, which is not as able as to display it magnificently, can't. And so we will decide in that unequal relationship from 200 years ago to keep it unequal. That is the argument.
That's their argument. And the rest of that argument is that we saw what happened with the Arab Spring. There were some of the museums and cultural institutions were overrun. Objects were either destroyed or they were looted and taken away. So they argue again, the colonizing nations argue that because of instability there, it's another reason that it shouldn't go back.
I mean, I would argue in this case, knowing nothing, it was called Provenance. We have on that great woman, you know her, who's head of Provenance at, is it the MFA?
It's at the MFA.
She was fabulous.
Yeah, she was fabulous, talking about this debate that's raging.
And the legit, right. But, you know, it seems to me, if a country...
Victoria is her name.
If a country has benefited from possession of something this important for so long, and the source country is unable at the current moment to display it adequately, you know what you do? You pay them restitution for having owned this thing or held it for 200 years, so that they do have the financial wherewithal to display it adequately. You had 200 years, it's their turn to get their own property back. That's in any case. We're talking to Jared Bone. Can we come back to our shores, please?
Absolutely. You went to Cirque du Soleil and saw 'Twas the Night Before. Please tell us about it. It sounds amazing.
Yeah, so this is the first time that we've seen a holiday show by Cirque du Soleil here in the Boston area, and usually we see them under the tent in the summertime, and it's in the round. So this is a little bit different because it's at the Wang Theater, and it's basically taking the poem of the night before Christmas and distilling that down and presenting acts that represent it. There's always a loose thread of a narrative in here. It's this girl, Isabella, who's a little bit jaded by all of the holiday shopping and the sort of the marketing and commercialization of Christmas, and so overwhelmed by that, she does her dive into this poem. I will say at the outset that this particular Cirque du Soleil production didn't seem as cohesive as most. You will find great costumes, as you always do with Cirque du Soleil, really, really great acts, and this is why you're there, fundamentally. But overall, the music, it doesn't all quite come together. However, the acts are pretty extraordinary. You know, for instance, this man who is in, I'm not sure his term for it, but he's essentially inside a hula hoop. You know, normally it's moving around you. He gets himself in it and is twirling around all over the stage. You have another person who is juggling with his mouth. This is the extraordinary part.
Marjorie and I have done that, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe not as well, but by the way,
one great bit of time.
What's the word used? Cohesive? Or,
yeah.
I mean, it is still, I haven't seen this one. Are you not in awe every time
absolutely.
you see? They're not even human.
No, because there's a woman who is lifted up by her hair and does these acrobatics mid-stage, and I was scrutinizing and I couldn't see any other brace, and so I think it was only by her hair. Another woman who's doing her acrobatics in a luggage trolley that lifts up mid-stage. Yeah, they're extraordinary people, and that's the great thing about Cirque du Soleil is people come to them. From what I've understood in my reporting over the years, people come to them with these acts, these that have never been done before, and you think, how is it possible with the human body? We haven't figured this out yet, but they come to Cirque du Soleil and then they work with their act and they hone it and then they go into the show.
You know, I have to say, other than which Disney is in Florida? Disney World?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, other than Disney World, Las Vegas is maybe the worst place on planet Earth. Having said that, the one time I was there, they have tons of Cirque du Soleil. So you can go from one the next night, and we did. They have spectacular.
The water show.
I don't know if I saw a Beatles thing. I saw something.
I saw that one too, and they also have the adult show, which I have not seen.
Ooh, I didn't see the adult show.
It's a saucy.
Marjorie, you were there.
I missed it, Jim.
How long is this? How long is
Jamie is nodding that
you saw it. How long is this thing here? This, obviously through Christmas.
No, only through December 11th.
Okay,
yep.
We're talking. So talk about this photographer at the Addison. He seems to have been at every single major moment in American history. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, this is a really small but mighty show at the Addison Gallery of American Art in Andover. I always love to point out the Addison Gallery is free, so you can go there for free and also see the Rosamund Purcell show while you're there. But the photographer is Harry Benson, and he was born in Scotland, was a photojournalist when he really first started out, and he was given the assignment to come to the United States and document the Beatles' first tour. He resisted because he was more inclined to do what he considered serious photojournalistic work, but he came and he did it anyway, and as he says, he never looked back. So what the Addison Gallery is doing right now is they're distilling 4 moments in the 1960s that Henry Benson photographed. And the reason they've done this, well, one, they have a collection of photographs, and those that they didn't have, he has lent to them because he's still alive. By the way, a man who has photographed 13 of the last presidents, from Eisenhower all the way to Biden, every luminary. It feels like he's been at every major moment in the world. But Alison Kemmerer, who's the director of the museum and put this show together, was thinking how this really reflects our times, that you can go from the horror of the assassination of Robert Kennedy to the euphoria of having the Beatles on tour. And we're just in this moment, the pendulum dramatically swinging back and forth.
The classic photograph of then Cassius Clay before his Muhammad Ali punching the four
George
Beatles,
Harrison.
and they're all going aside.
Yeah.
It was his, which I did not know until last night.
And the picture of RFK is just moments before he was assassinated.
So that's why you look at the Beatles and you see these fresh-faced young men who are so excited to be on tour, and he captures the intimacy when they're at the piano, and you can see that they're at work or they're fooling around with Cassius Clay, or they're here at Suffolk Downs. There's a photograph from their performance when they came right here to Boston, and then you see the tanks rolling through Berlin as the Berlin Wall was erected. He was there for that, and he was also there for the James Meredith March Against Fear, which was supposed to be a peaceful march, weeks long. It was derailed immediately. They tried to derail it anyway with an attack, but it persisted. He was there for that, and then
Can you stop there for a second? The photograph of John Lewis, Martin Luther King, and Ralph Abernathy marching, singing "We Shall Overcome." Is that one of the most moving things you've ever seen in your life?
Why is it that people find a still photograph sometimes so much more meaningful than a video?
Well, I can tell you, I think about this as we're putting together Open Studio quite a bit, because I think with a still photograph, you have time to just sit with it for a little bit and absorb it. A video is moving, and video is terrific, and we all work in television to some degree, and digital, and this is why we do it. But there is something about a still photograph. If you can just spend even a few seconds with it, you have something to home in on, whether it's somebody's expression or the totality of three monumental figures together and what that represents. Because video is moving, you don't have that opportunity.
By the way, 2 updates. Victoria Reed is the name of the great curator of provenance at the MFA. And an anonymous texter said, "Who cleans the statue that Jim touched?"
That's
and we've
right.
discussed this before. I was in the
That's
Vatican,
right.
and I challenge anybody in this room to say you hadn't done the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm in the Vatican, the one and only time I've been there, and I'm near the Pietà. And I look around, and nobody, you're not supposed to touch it. I look around, and there's nobody there. So I do what even you would do, Jared. I don't care what you say. I looked around, and I touched it. And I touched it not to violate the rules. You know why I touched it? Because when you touch it, you are touching something that Michelangelo's hand touched hundreds of years ago. One of the most thrilling moments of my life. And this texter wants to know who's going to clean the damn thing. And frankly, I don't care who cleans it. All I'm telling you, to this moment, I remember placing my hand in violation of rules on the, it is, have you ever done that to any work of art?
Because I'll touch it and I'll think, wow, I'm touching something
Jim
Rowdy
touched.
touched that Michelangelo touched.
But would you not,
can only hope.
Would you not, in all seriousness, would you not do that if you had an opportunity to be alone? I wouldn't touch the canvas of a great painting. Wouldn't you? You wouldn't
I
do
had
that?
the opportunity to touch. I can't remember specifically what it was, something pretty significant recently, and you can't now because you know there are cameras everywhere.
But if you could, you would.
I was left alone in a room, and I thought, I am so tempted right now, but I knew there had to have been cameras.
If there were not cameras in the room.
Probably.
Probably, exactly.
I should never say that, because every conservator will never talk to me again.
Okay, Jared Bowen, before you tell us what's going on in Open Studio, tell us what's the renovation, I guess you'd call it, of the Boston Athenaeum. What happened?
Yeah, this is really exciting. The Boston Athenaeum is a very storied institution, 200 years old, a membership library with a very Harry Potter-esque address of 10.5 Beacon Street. And it has all manner of treasures, hundreds of thousands of old manuscripts and rare books and maps and pieces of art. And so during the pandemic, they have engaged in this major renovation and expansion of the library. And some people who are familiar with the Boston Athenaeum may think that this is not a place that was for them because it's a membership organization and very Boston Brahmin-y. And it is absolutely the desire of the Athenaeum at this point to say, no, if you had that perception, we never meant to have it, but let's change that and make this as accessible as possible. So if you go into the museum, or the Athenaeum rather, you'll find that it's much more open now, it's airy, it looks over the granary burial ground. You can either go there by way of a membership or buy a day pass and see this fabulous art.
Day pass is free, is it not?
It's a nominal fee.
Okay.
But they have a new children's library with a gigantic mural by Aqua Holmes from Dorchester, Roxbury. And it just feels different now as you walk through this space.
Lighter.
And I should also mention they have this great exhibition right now of artists' books. And these are books created by artists, usually one time only. So it's filled with pages that they have painted. Sometimes there's a very sculptural element to them. So the whole place feels different
Can
now.
you touch those books when nobody's looking, or what?
They're behind glass.
Oh, that's too bad. What are you doing? What day is this?
Okay.
Today's Friday,
tonight,
Jim.
Friday night.
You can catch up on past episodes because of the PBS Pledge Drive.
Oh, of
we're
course.
not on the air right
Exactly. And what would the past... Oh, so they have to go online and
now. You
do
have
the
to
thing.
wgbh.org/open studio.
Open Studio.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Jared, it's very nice
Jared Bowen,
to see you.
thank you very
Great to
much.
see you.
Thank you
We
so
were speaking
much.
with Jared Bowen, GBH Executive Arts Editor, who's also the host of Open Studio, which you can catch Friday nights, usually at 8:30 on GBH2, but you can't tonight because of the pledge drive. I want to announce, before we announce our next guest, we have a second Smug Mug winner, Jim. That would be Bruce Spiegelman.
Where are you, Bruce?
I think he's right
Oh,
there.
there he is. He seems relatively happy.
He seems relatively happy. Thank you very much for participating on our raffle.
What are you
Bruce.
saying?
He hasn't seen the mug yet.
Said he's happy
Well,
and
let me
hasn't
tell
seen the
you,
mug.
It defines
Take
smug.
the mug
Just
back
take
from
a
the
look
guy,
at that,
will you,
and you will
please?
know.
What do you think?
What it
Smug, huh?
Smug.
Exactly.
Very smug.
Thank you.
Okay, after a short break,
We're giving
gonna
away
bring-
one more in this hour.
Yes,
a third
we are.
and final one.
A third
yes.
and final one. We're going to bring you Live Music Friday. This is going to be unbelievable. It's a holiday music courtesy of the folks at Boston Baroque. You are listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, and we are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, President Biden is in Boston today, meeting Prince William. Workers are planning to protest the president over his bill to stop a railroad strike. Local lawyers are suing Florida Governor Ron DeSantis over his treatment of migrants. And with Question 4 now approved, the RMV is moving forward with driver's licenses for undocumented immigrants. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH's All Things Considered.
Funding for our programs comes from you and Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts, offering MedX Medicare supplement plans that include no referrals, worldwide travel coverage, and the ability to see any doctor that accepts Medicare. BlueCrossMA.com/go. And the British International School of Boston, committed to helping students achieve academically, personally, and socially through global learning opportunities. Virtual open house December 7th. Registration at bisboston.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Marge Regan, live at the Boston Public Library. Streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. There's a rumor that Bruce Spiegelman just sold his mug, by the way. So on the open, I don't know if it's true, but in any case, one more mug to be given away in this hour. It's time for Live Music Fridays, our first holiday edition of 2022. For 50 years, Boston Baroque has been bringing their distinct style of period music to audiences in Boston and around the world, more so now with the advent of streaming. And every year for 5 decades, or I think it's a little shorter than that, they put on a performance of the classic holiday piece, Handel's Messiah. I'm right about that, right? A little shorter than 50. Okay. The tradition continues this year, and at GBH, no less. Tomorrow, Saturday the 3rd, at 7:30 at the otherworldly Calderwood Studio at GBH. You can catch Boston Baroque's performance, as well as Sunday at 3 when they're playing New England Conservatory's fabulous Jordan Hall, too. You can stream the show at Baroque.Boston. Did I get that right, I hope? Somebody? Who knows? Okay, we'll check it. I think we did. But before any of that, they join us here at the BPL. We're joined now by Christina Day Martinson. She's Boston Baroque's concert master, whatever that is. We'll find out in a second. Ann McMahon Quintero is here, too. She'll be performing Messiah this weekend as a mezzo-soprano soloist. And by the way, we should introduce the other musicians performing. Amy Sims on violin, Jason Fisher on viola, and Michael Unterman on cello. Welcome to all 5 of you. Great to have you.
Yeah, we heard you guys during the noon break, and this is going to be a real treat for everybody that's here. But just tell us, we'll start with you, Christina. For people that don't know about Boston Baroque, tell us, just elaborate on what Jim said and your distinct style.
For Boston Broke, those of you who don't know Boston Broke, it is a period instrument ensemble. So unlike the Boston Symphony or other local groups or big symphony orchestras that play on what we call modern instruments, we play on what we call period instruments, which we're trying to replicate what the instruments that they played on back, 200-300 years ago.
With the technique they used 200 or 300
as well,
years.
yeah.
That's
So it's not
incredible.
just the instruments; it's a whole different language. In fact, like you can't just pick up a Baroque violin versus a modern and start playing, and it sounds like a Baroque violin, or even that music. You have to really learn a whole new language, and they respond in a completely different way. The strings are gut strings instead of steel wound, or steel.
From animals.
Yeah, from animals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is the wood, like in a violin or viola, is the wood the same now, or is the wood different as well?
The wood is the same. In fact, a lot of the modern instruments that people play on were Baroque instruments.
Yeah.
Like Stradivarius's were all Baroque instruments, but then were modernized. So many of the people playing modern or Baroque, the age is not the difference. It's more the setup. Like there's a different bridge, a different tailpiece, bass bar inside, and our bows. If I had my bow with me, I should. That's a huge difference. Yeah, it's the bow.
Horsehair?
Well, yes, but all bows have horsehair. It's more the shape. So, like modern bows are more convex, and ours are concave, and Baroque are convex, and it has a very different technique, completely different technique, in fact.
How'd you get involved with these people, Anne? This is not your first, correct?
Oh, God, no. This is not my first time
What's
at the
the
rodeo. I've been working with Boston Baroque since, I think, 2007. I came up as a very young singer and auditioned for Marty and got my first gig, and they can't get rid of me now. I'm a
Thank
nightmare.
God.
I just won't go away.
Marty is the guy who
Yes.
founded this a mere 50 years ago, who is
Yeah.
still alive and well.
Martin Perlman, yeah.
Doing incredible.
Yeah.
So what attracted you to Boston Baroque to begin with, Anne?
They hired me.
That's how we feel about GBH, by the way. Same kind of deal. It's incredible.
It really inspires loyalty. I adore working with Boston Baroque. I've considered it my artistic and musical home for a very long time. It's sort of my refuge, where I get to be truly artistic instead of just like trying to scream out and be loud enough and do all the things. Like I can actually make music with everyone in the entire room.
Are you going to think I'm low rent if I say you can really sing? Let me tell you, can.
I'm okay with it.
You can really.
You can say it
really
more. Keep
sing.
going. Yeah.
So before you join your colleagues, and my understanding is Christina on the violin, you're going to join your colleagues for the first piece, and then Anne, you're going to join them for the second piece. I'm embarrassed to ask this too. What is a concertmaster?
So there, I suppose, many different roles a concertmaster plays. One obvious one is that we tune the orchestra, so we stand up and tune. But I guess I always say, like, if Marty's the president, concertmaster would be the vice president. Like we have quite a bit of power in shaping the orchestra. Like a concertmaster technically is the leader of the entire orchestra.
Okay. I think Christina's being too modest. I always thought the concertmaster was also the best violinist in the symphony, right? It's the best violinist. You're the first violinist as opposed to the second violinist.
She's averting her eyes, so obviously it is true.
Yeah, that's what I always thought.
So when I interrupted myself to say, well, Boston Baroque has been around 50 years, Christina. The Messiah has been played since the early 80s. Am I right about that, or since the beginning? Which is it? You're looking at a coach? You've been playing it for a hell of a long time, trust me.
Yes, around that time, yes. I'm sorry, I joined
It's okay. And you're
later.
1980, I think, is
1980 is what we're being told.
Yep.
Thank you for assisting. And you're going to leave us in a second, but the first piece you're playing is what? And it's part of the Messiah?
Yes.
What are you playing?
The first piece we're playing is called the Pifa. It's a little instrumental interlude, a shepherd song, basically, that's also supposed to create this bucolic scene for then the text. The next text is about shepherds, but it's all instrumental, which is the only piece.
Okay, well,
While you're could you gently put your microphone on the table?
Yes, you could gently put a microphone on the table. Unlike me, I've been banging it around. But Anne, yes, for people that don't know this, what is the Messiah?
A very naughty boy. Sorry, I could not help myself. I apologize. It's a beautiful oratorio that does take gospel text and just illuminates it it's really a dramatic piece.
Very dramatic.
Which is, it's lovely, and it's always interesting to me that it's a Christmas oratorio here in the States, but it was originally intended as an Easter oratorio.
Oh, I didn't know
So
that.
yeah, well, and that's and so often we just do the Christmas portions.
Yep.
Which is fun and holiday happy, but yeah, it's fascinating.
So the whole thing is quite long.
It is. The faster you go, the shorter it is.
Sort of the same with life. Exactly. Thank you very much. Here it is, Boston Baroque with PIFA.
Fascinated by Baroque music and also Renaissance music. Obviously, it's from centuries and centuries ago. I think of Boston Camerata, they play Renaissance music here in Boston, or Blue Heron. But what is it has a staying power, which is really quite incredible. What is that, do you think?
I think, honestly, it's the transparency of it.
Yeah.
Because what's on the page is very simple. It's what you imbue with it as human performers and as human interpreters that gives it its magic. And so, and I think this is one of the things that I love most about working with Boston Baroque is that, I've done a lot of Messiahs in my life, and I've done a lot of concerts and things, and I never get bored. I sit on that stage and I'm never bored because it's the nuances, and every single moment is a new experience, and it's fresh every time. And I think that's something that's really available when you're doing these very transparent compositions.
So, Christina, you brought your bow back. Is that because you wanted to show us something? Because you worried somebody was going to take it? Which one is it? Why did you bring it back up here? What's the deal? Could we turn on Christina's mic, please? Try it again. Okay, try it again.
Hello? Oh, no.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay.
There we go.
Why'd you bring it back? Tell us about it.
In case people wanted to see.
Well, hold up.
I don't
for
have
those
a
who are here
modern.
in streaming, what were you trying to explain to us before?
So I don't have a modern bow to compare, but a modern bow is concave. In this, the camber is convex here. That's one thing. It's shorter, much shorter.
What does that do to the sound for lay people?
So the modern setup and instruments were designed to project more in bigger hall. As the halls got bigger, we needed to project
Just more
further
volume.
and steel strings and stronger bows. And it's also designed more for the romantic modern music, which is more singing, whereas Baroque and classical has more rhetorical. That's the aspect to the music, so it's much more speaking.
How does it feel? What do you feel playing a period instrument as opposed to playing I don't know if the proper adjective is contemporary, but you know what I mean. Is there a different feel for you, the player?
Absolutely. I think that, though we say we do this to be authentic, I think that what it really does is bring us closer to the language of their time. And so I feel closer to that music and the language, for instance, when I'm using this equipment versus the more modern, which is more lyrical singing, where people are going for more even tone generally, where you want the tip to sound the same as the frog and down bows, up bows the same as down bows. In this music, in a way, the more natural weight of the bow and the variety in sounds and colors is
pretty beautiful.
We want that variety.
If I may insert, I liken it to, look, I love hot sauce. I love spicy food. I love like really bold flavors, but I also love an opportunity to really taste the natural simplicity of really basic, well-made food. And I think that that's kind of the difference here. It's like you can go for like bang, boom, exciting, like flashy, bold flavors, or you can like have this moment of simplicity.
Great.
At the same time, though, I might add that I think for those of us who love this, we find it has more of a palette of colors and nuances, and there's more. It's more subtle, perhaps, but there's a little bit more. It's more colors
palette.
in the palette. Yeah.
So, Anne, what are you performing?
I will be performing He Shall Feed His Flock, the first half, because we have no soprano.
Oh, you don't?
Okay.
And are you going to, I guess we'll say at the end.
Am I going to sing along? Is that what you're saying? No,
how to get tickets and performing and
no.
that sort of thing.
Okay. We're going to hear this second piece.
I think you both, if you don't mind, quietly put them.
Our mezzo soprano is Anne McMahon Quintero. We also introduce our concertmaster Christina Day Martison. She's also joined by Amy Sims on the violin, Jason Fisher on the viola, and Michael Unterman on the cello. This is Boston Baroque, and they're playing another piece from Handel's Messiah, He Shall Feed His Flock, as I said before, with mezzo soprano Anne McMahon Quintero singing.
Sure.
Baroque, Concertmaster Christina Day Marnison. They've also been joined by Amy Sims on the violin, Jason Fisher on the viola, Michael Unterman on the cello. Thank you very, very much for being here. And if you want to listen to a live music performance from Boston Baroque, here's the deal. Of Handel's Messiah, you go to Baroque.Boston. So I want to make sure I got it correct. Yeah. Baroque.Boston, in case you don't know how to spell Baroque, Baroque, Baroque.Boston. Thank you so much for being here.
And it's streaming too, and you can find out about it on that site. Should check it out. Congratulations. You guys are just fabulous. Thank you for playing for us.
Okay, from the sublime to the less than sublime, let's talk about dogs in the office. Do you want your little office mate to bring in their little teeny tiny Pomeranian, their great big German Shepherd, their Bull Mastiff, a black or a yellow lab? A good way to get employees back in person, or a good way to get a mess on your shoes after 8 hours at your desk? You listen to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH live at the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
First-year orientation. There are some nervous jitters, and of course, there's more than a little awe.
If you don't get goosebumps when you come to these buildings, I don't know what else you need.
We're talking to Sydney Kamlager, representative-elect from California. That's next time on The Takeaway from WNYC and PRX.
This afternoon at 2, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you and United Healthcare, providing health plan coverage options for New England businesses and their employees. You can learn more at uhc.com. That's uhc.com. And Ocean State Job Lot, fighting hunger by donating food to regional food banks and local food pantries. Learn more at oceanstatejoblot.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Marjorie Egan, live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We talked about this with Shirley Leung from the Globe a little earlier in the show. Right now, offices are pulling out every stop imaginable to try and get their employees back in person, at least part-time. One perk some bosses are considering is letting workers bring their dogs to the office, and we want to know where you stand on the issue. If the free lunches aren't going to do it, if lax dress codes aren't cutting it, is being able to bring your, Pekingese Shih Tzu mix the thing that's going to get you there? Give us a call or a text, 877-301-8970. We'd also like you to identify when you call. Are you a dog owner who would like to bring your dog or not bring your dog? Are you a non-dog owner who doesn't want or does want and is fine with your podmate or your office coworker to bring their dog to the office? 877-301-8970. Now, I would like to say, many years ago, when we worked at another radio station, on a Saturday, Marjorie brought her dog in when there were only 3 people in the whole building. The dog did no harm. The dog weighed about 4 pounds. And one of our colleagues,
11 pounds.
Pretty,
he's on his little dog
whatever,
bed.
He's small. Was our colleagues, who I will name before 2 o'clock on the air.
Please do not do that.
Why would I not?
Please do not do that.
Okay, who I will name on the air before 2 o'clock called the boss like a little puppy herself to report Marjorie. And by the way, didn't even have the decency to go up to you and say you shouldn't have your dog at work, because we were not permitted to have our dogs there. But Marjorie brought him in for about 10 minutes.
Yeah, except one of our fellow radio hosts had his dog there all the time.
That is a very good point.
Remember that? The great Lauren and Wally. Yeah, the great show on 105.7.
They are not the bad actors in this.
They were
we
not
got to the bad actor before the show was
I think it was
over.
Lauren had his dog there all the time.
He did.
Dog,
huge
big
dog. You had a little tiny dog.
Teeny tiny dog. I was turned in.
So how do you feel,
reprimanded.
Marjorie? You work at GBH. I think
do.
You're aware
Yes,
of that.
I do.
And while we're at the library today, so forget the library. When we're back in Brighton at 1 Guest Street, if you're sitting at your little pod, and Jamie, for example, do you have a dog, Jamie? You don't have a dog. Forget it. Okay, so any one of our co-workers, Aiden, you have a dog? No, he doesn't have a dog. Okay, so forget that. Somebody who works for you brings their dog in while you work. It makes a little noise. maybe not a breed that you're as comfortable with as others. How do you feel as a former dog owner if that person exercises I don't even know if you're allowed to bring a dog at GBH, but assuming you were.
I like dogs.
How would you feel about it?
I would
You'd be
feel
okay with that?
I would feel okay.
What if it was a pit bull?
Well, I'm a little nervous about pit bulls, but I've been reprimanded over and over again from pit bull owners. I don't know what I'm talking about, and that it's about the treatment of the dog and not the breed, etc. But I love dogs. I think it'd be nice. Here's the thing: all these people adopted these puppies during the pandemic.
That's a very good point.
And now, all of a sudden, they were home full time with the dogs.
Yeah.
Now they have to go back to work. The dogs are traumatized, separation anxiety. They have to put the dogs on Prozac and all this stuff, or they have to pay a lot of money for a dog walker or a doggy daycare.
Yes.
Why not let them bring the dogs into the office? Now you're going to have people that are going to say, "Oh, I'm allergic to dogs, and I can't except for hair dogs." And most dogs are, well, I don't know what the breakdown is, but a lot of dogs are furry dogs. They're not hair dogs. That's what you're allergic to. You know, remember that when Obama had to get the hair
Portuguese
dogs?
Portuguese
water dogs because they're hair
Kennedy gave
dogs.
them to him, didn't he?
Yes.
Ted
and
Kennedy.
now the current President Biden has German Shepherds, which are fur dogs. And of course, one of his German Shepherds had to be sent away because it kept biting everybody.
Sent away doesn't mean euthanized. It means just couldn't live at the White House.
Couldn't live at the White House. It was very sad. But Commander is still there, and a cat.
You know that.
The
they
German
got
Shepherd.
a cat, right?
Yeah, they have a cat as well. So, I mean, I think it's not. I mean, people love dogs.
It's relaxing
Look at
too
how,
to have a dog.
Look at how we've done a million stories about how people's blood pressure goes down,
Exactly.
how people's mood
My point
goes up,
exactly.
how people bring dogs into places where kids have had trauma or adults have had trauma, and you know the dogs they bring to the hospital to let people pet them.
Okay, here's the deal, the compromise we're going to reach on me outing the woman who outed Marjorie.
Yep.
If you text us at 877-301-8970, she's pretty prominent in town.
Jim,
if you guess who she is, I will say,
wish
you're
you
not
would-
doing it, I'm doing
No,
it.
I would.
If you guess who it is, I
Uh-huh.
will say her name on the air, and if you don't, I won't. Isn't that a good compromise?
Okay.
Okay,
I
fine.
don't know what you said. I was reading the.
John, who worked with us at the old station, he knows. You can't enter, John. I'm sorry.
It's a bad idea, John. You shouldn't be doing
877
this. I think you should cut the mic.
877-301-8970.
Okay, let's go to Kaylin in Denver. Hi, Kaylin.
Well, Kaylin used to be here at the library from time to time. Now he's in Denver. Hi, Kaylin. How are you?
Hi, both. I've had two family dogs, the first one of which was a dachshund that came to work with me every single day pre-pandemic right in downtown Crossing. He was nervous at first, an older dachshund, but became so comfortable that after the first few weeks, he was taking the elevator by himself to go say hi to my coworkers, walking around the office. And it got to a point where we had to start we'd go to Roach Brothers Supermarket every morning and tie a Mylar balloon to him so we could see if he was starting to wander.
That is
Hold on. Wait a minute. Kaylin, how did the dog get off the elevator?
Oh, obviously,
Did they
he pressed the floor, and
But
when
how
the
did
door
dog-
opens...
Well, I know, but the dog wanted to be in the correct floor.
Yeah, he would see a crowd of people, and he would get on the elevator with them, and I'd get text messages saying, "Hey, Riley's down on the 5th floor, by the way, just hanging out with us if you want to come get him." And so we had to start tying balloons to make sure that we could track where he is around the office.
Kaylin, did you get any complaints from coworkers or no?
No, absolutely not. It was the best thing in the world. It was such a serotonin boost for everybody. He would walk in client meetings, they'd say hi. He would have various beds around the office, dog bowls around the office for water. I mean, we had a name tag on his collar that said Chief Dog Officer for about 2 years.
Love the story. Kaylin, it's good to hear from you as always. Good luck out there in Denver.
You know, our coworker Cy over there, he probably has multiple dogs.
How many
Is that
dogs do you
correct?
have? How many dogs do you have?
Two dogs. That's right.
Well, if he brought him in, you'd be fine with that, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
As long as he fixes your computer.
And he's done that many times,
He
actually.
has.
Amber from Worcester says, I'm admittedly the most likely person to get into the van to look at puppies and be kidnapped, but not sure I want dogs in the office. I'd never get any work done unless it's my dog.
I understand that. What did Shirley say from the story that Athena Health is the second most dog-friendly employer in the United States of America? I don't know what number one is, but in addition to letting you bring your dog to work, I guess, they provide X number of days a year of subsidies for doggy daycare kind of thing. I think they provide some level of pet insurance. By the way, this is not just because employers have decided this is a kind and gentle thing to do. It's because, as we discussed with Shirley, particularly right now when people are rethinking the workplace, this is a perk that the vast majority of employees, obviously not everyone, vast majority of employees find to be attractive. So
So Paul from Worcester says, the thing about dogs, they're dogs, not kids. Some dogs don't act or react as you might expect. Most dogs aren't adaptable and as chill as the dog Sawyer was at your thing in Framingham. Do we have a dog?
Oh, we did actually. We had a fabulous dog there.
Yeah.
We did.
He's
We did that thing at the
Paul
beer
is the
garden.
owner of Pepper the Wonder Dog.
Of course he is.
And Pepper the Wonder Dog is smart, sweet, extremely well trained, and extremely well behaved. But not every dog might be trained that well.
Right,
a lot
but you
of people
hope
don't
if you have
train
a
their
coworker
dogs.
and you bring a dog and it's not well trained, then they don't bring the dog again. I mean,
What about
act
the people that are
reasonably.
allergic? Mark from Quincy has a 150-pound English Mastiff who would love to meet my coworkers, but the dry cleaning bills would be
Yeah,
expensive.
that's the problem. Okay, let's go to Patty in Watertown. You're next on Boston Public Radio. We're talking about bringing dogs to work. Hey there.
Hi, long time, first time.
Oh, thank you. Thank you a lot.
And so here's the thing. I love dogs so much. I'm like the woman who loved dogs too much.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what I would end up doing is playing with the dog all day and not getting any work done.
What's wrong with that?
Distraction.
What's the problem with that?
Nothing as far as I'm concerned, nothing.
See, my understanding of these kinds of things, this is not an area of expertise. If you have something that brings a lot of joy, I mean this seriously, Patty, to a worker, even if it's distracting, that distraction, this sounds oxymoronic, I know, that distraction, when you are freed of it, which you would be at some point, makes you even more productive because you're feeling good about the day. Do you know what I mean? So you lose a few minutes of... Well, go ahead.
No, let me tell you, for many years in the Watertown, Boston area, I have been a home care therapist.
Oh.
And the dogs will come to me because they recognize that I love them. And they look me in the eye and they're like, yeah, you're here for me, right? And so I would pet them and play with them a little and then go, okay, now I got to focus on my patient, your owner. And yeah, so I do it.
Thank you.
But
And
you're
Patty,
right. It gives me a lot of joy.
exactly. And if you're joyous, you're probably going to do better in the long run at work. So thanks for the call, and thanks for listening all this time. Thanks for your first call, actually.
One of our texters point out that most presidents of the United States have had dogs. Trump was, I think, the only, or certainly one of the
few.
only
We did this,
one
yeah.
who didn't have a dog. Enough said. And a couple of the texters has guessed who it was. Jim, we're not going to read it. Okay.
Did they guess the right person?
Yes, they did.
Oh, well, then I'll read it in a minute.
877-301-8970. Peter from Rhode Island, thank you for calling.
Hey, Peter.
Hey.
Hey.
Look, I'm a big-time dog lover.
Yeah.
Had dogs all my life.
Yeah. Who are you talking to, us, or who are you talking to?
He's doing a however. He's
Go
doing a
ahead.
however.
Oh, sorry, however. Yeah. However, we heard that, yeah. However.
People who bring dogs into work
Yeah.
aren't necessarily the best dog owners I've ever seen.
Well,
the reason being...
Yeah. Peter, you got to turn the radio down. I think that's the problem. If you're listening to us in the background, there's a delay deal. And so turn it down, and then let's see if we can get this thing together here. Go ahead.
How's that? Is that better?
Excellent. Excellent. Go ahead. So you don't like dogs at work, and that's because...
I love dogs. I love dogs very much. But when the people who bring dogs to work are the ones that bother.
You don't like the people who bring the dogs. You're fine with the dogs. Is that where you are, Peter? Okay, it's a bad connection. Peter, thank you very much for the call. By the way, I just looked up the story in the Globe. Rover, which is that thing where you can rent your services or get services, it's an app. Rated Athena Health, as I said, #2 on the list of dog-friendly companies nationwide. In addition to a pet care stipend and pet insurance benefit, the company, I think Shirley mentioned this, has a bi-monthly yappy hour in the office kitchen where the dogs are treated to cups of whipped cream. She loves the attention, this one particular dog owner says. She wolfs down her puppuccino. Yeah. Whatever.
I once went to a dog birthday party where they
I know,
actually
you
had a
told me
dog
that.
birthday cake. Yeah, it's made of
How
chopped
was
liver.
that?
It was great.
Chopped liver?
Chopped liver, yeah.
I
It had
would've eaten
frosting
it.
on it and
Oh.
everything. Everything
What
else.
kind of frosting do you put on chopped liver?
I think it was cream cheese. I think it was cream
God.
cheese. So here's Jessica in Dedham. The most important thing is that dog owners take responsibility for their animals. Owners should know if their dogs are well behaved enough to be in public. Marjorie's grand dog, Leela, this is true, is an angel. That would be my daughter's dog.
How do they know? Who's this?
Because she's a friend of my daughter's.
Oh, okay.
But my feral corgi Gumbo would never have been office ready, and that's a good point. This is Jessica, somebody I know. She had a tough, well, actually, I thought it was a great dog. dog, but it wouldn't be good in the office.
Well, she's
Gumbo.
a responsible dog
Responsible
owner. You have
dog
to
owner.
assume that a responsible dog owner is not going to bring an inappropriate dog to the
My
office.
daughter must be a reaction to my child rearing or my dog rearing, one or the other. My youngest daughter has a dog that, is trained within an inch of its life. It is the most obedient dog.
What was wrong with your dog? Your dog was fabulous.
My dog was very badly. When you have a little dog, you don't really need to train it as much as you do a big dog, and little dogs are yappy. And that's the problem with little dogs.
By the way, we should say, when Marjorie brought her dog to the old radio station and that woman outed you, your dog was not crapping in the office.
It was in a soundproof room. Soundproof room.
It was quiet.
Quiet.
It was respectful, yet she chose to out you behind your back.
She didn't like me, Jim.
We'll tell you who she is.
Brickton from Rosendale. Thank you for calling.
Hey, Brickton. Marjorie's very
Hey, everybody.
Yeah, go
ahead. I had a whole thing going, and I'm thinking about Jim eating chopped liver with cream cheese spread on it, and I don't know if I can do this anymore.
Brickton, before you move away from the criticism, if someone put a pile of wonderful chopped liver with little cream cheese on the side, tell me you would not devour that thing.
I'll tell you what, my dog would.
Exactly. Face first.
Yep.
So would I.
So I just want to say, so before the pandemic, I became a dog walker, and I turned it into my whole career. During the pandemic, I never looked back. It was such a great change. I work with an incredible group of dog walkers. If you don't mind the shameless plug, we're called Boylston Fetch, based out of Jamaica Plain, Brookline, Rossendale.
Very cute. Boston Fetch. I love it.
Yeah, and we have dogs in all of our offices. Our dogs, we bring the dogs that we walk through there so they can come and get treats and get special attention. And you never see anybody in that office who's not thrilled to be there. And I can't imagine living without it. I know, hopefully I'll be with them forever. But I couldn't imagine ever looking for another job and thinking, I'll just do it without my dog.
Hey.
Once you do it, you can't go back.
Brickton, were you a dog person before the pandemic came and you became a dog walking kind of person? Was this like an epiphany or what was the deal?
You know, I was fortunate enough to adopt an elderly dog some years ago, and she needed a lot of work. We gave it to her, and I thought, wow, this is so much more rewarding than anything I've been doing with my career in auto body at the time. And so I just made it my life, and honestly, I could not imagine doing anything else. It makes me and everyone around me so happy.
Now, ordinarily we don't do this, but since you brazenly said the name of your operation in the spirit of the season, say it again.
Oh, thank you so much. It's Boylston Fetch. We're based out of Jamaica Plain, Rosendale, West Roxbury, and we just opened up a location in Brookline. So if you need anything, reach out to us. We're always there for you.
It's like an empire. Brickton, thanks for the call. We appreciate it. 877-301-8970.
Caitlin from Clinton says our Clinton Elementary School pre-K has an in-house dog in the guidance office, and the kids just love it. A couple of people are complaining about, dogs not doing their business outside, doing it inside instead. And
I hate that expression.
Well, what do you want to say, Jim?
There's no better expression. By the way, this has it's something to do with this. I know it's an odd segue. What was the name of the company that the guy who was head of Berkeley founded where you could deposit your child when you went shopping at Star Market?
Oh, Bright
Horizons.
Yeah, it was the Star Market out on the bend of Commonwealth Avenue. It was the best
great
thing.
was that?
Yeah, they had a great daycare there. I used to do it all the time.
I did it too.
You could leave your kids in the daycare. You had to pay, but it wasn't very much. And they had a climbing wall, and they had a huge sandbox inside the Star Market. You'd food shop for like 4 hours because you could get away from the kids while they're down in the daycare. It was absolutely great. Instead of having to fight with them, going down the aisles about buy me this and buy me that, buy the other thing.
You know what that was called? This guy's company is Boylston Fetch. That was called Baby Fetch down there at right here. That was a great thing they had there. Let's go to Jesse in Boston. You're next on Boston Public Radio. Welcome.
Oh, hello. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you for calling. What's going on?
Oh, I'm so thrilled to talk to you. First time getting through.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, I really love dogs, but I know people that don't, that either don't like them or are scared of them. I have a friend who absolutely loves dogs, but she's allergic and is just devastated she can't have one. So I think I wanted to say that sometimes dog owners think their dogs are really great and maybe they're not. So I just think that in an office situation, you'd have to make sure that every single person was okay with it.
I agree with that.
And I think also you'd have to make sure that whoever is the holdout remains anonymous, because that maybe everybody wants one and one person is allergic, and then if you implement it, then when you hire new people, just make sure you say you're dog friendly, and then, if you really want to limit yourself in some ways to only people who borrow Kate's
You know,
dog.
you
And,
should have been the
like,
first caller, not the last caller. Those are the sane protocols
Exactly.
to be doing this thing. Jesse, that was a great call. We're glad you got through. We really appreciate it.
This is from Kate and Newton. Bringing your dog to work is like bringing your toddler. Didn't we just do that for 2 years during the pandemic? That said, I did bring my dog to work on the day we could, and sure enough, I looked over at my 120-pound chocolate English lab who was peeing in the rubber tree plant.
I told you we had a dog for Christmas, our tenant's dog, a couple of years ago. We took it to somebody's house, walked right in, peed right on the Christmas tree.
There you go.
Walked over the Christmas tree,
There you
raised
go.
it. So,
People wanted to bring their cats.
yeah.
They want to bring their cats as well as their dogs.
Look at what just came in.
I know.
This would be, Ryan, we only have a couple minutes left, but we decided since Ryan Landry from the Gold Dust Orphans was in the neighborhood, and his show is starting, which not only are we going to next Friday as a BPR team, but we perform in, we being me and Marjorie, we
Our
decided
voices.
we'd spend a minute with Ryan talking about, hello, Ryan Landry.
Hello, both of you. And
hello.
Look at you! Look at you! All dressed up in your matching hat and
Yeah, I
scarf.
washed my hair,
Very
Marjorie.
festive.
That's why
Oh,
it's
you
covered
washed your
up.
hair. Yeah, you did wash your hair last time I saw you. It was
Yeah.
very impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'd seen it unwashed so many times before that.
That's nice. That's really nice of you to say.
Hush, Marjorie.
So you've said this before, but the clock is running, both literally and figuratively. Explain to us what this performance is, in which Marjorie Egan and my favorite radio host, Jim Browdy, play a very small but critical role. What is
well,
it?
I have to tell you, opening night was last night. It was absolutely fantastic. Sold out, standing ovation. Couldn't
great.
be better. And I have to admit that what most people talked about on the way out was the Jim and Marjorie puppet show.
That is the biggest pile of crap.
That is
now,
not a
hold on.
pile
Is that really
of
true?
crap. I crap you not.
Wait a minute. We had a purloin puppet incident here, did we not? I mean, aren't they? What happened to the
We
puppets?
can't talk about this, Marjorie. We can't talk about
Oh,
that.
okay. I'm sorry.
You created puppets, essentially, puppet versions of us.
Yes,
Our
I
real
did.
voices. You
Yes.
directed us.
Yes.
We performed. But since we can't be there every night, we're recorded. But raise your right hand, because this makes me feel really good. Raise your right hand. I'm telling you, raise your. Okay, fine. Did people really say good things about our
Yes,
performance? Honest
they
to God?
really did, which
Oh,
I
that
couldn't
warms my-
believe. I could not believe.
Well, let me tell you something. You were a great director because I could not. I mean, you drew the emotion out of me, which I couldn't really get going to scream at Jim.
Yeah.
Because I don't usually scream
Don't
at
give
Jim.
it away.
But I did scream at Jim.
You did
for
scream
your-
at Jim, and you
as
did a
best I
wonderful
could.
job. Well, if everyone comes to see the show, they'll get to see you
Okay, so
scream
we only
at
have
Jim.
2 minutes. What's the name of this baby?
The name of the baby is Little Christmas Tree Shop of Horrors, and it's playing at the Lithuanian Club in beautiful South Boston.
Yeah.
You can get your tickets at brownpapertickets.com, but all next weekend is sold out already.
Wow.
So, and then the last weekend I think is about to
So
sell
what the
out.
hell are you doing here?
Well, because you can come this week. People
That's
can come
right.
this weekend.
Come this weekend. We're going to be there next Friday night. I'm very excited about it. You have a dog.
Yes,
right?
I have two.
Two.
Yes, Dolly, the most famous dog in
Well,
America.
that's right.
Is
Yeah,
Dolly still alive?
Dolly is actually in the show. Yeah.
Who looks exactly like Salvador Dali,
That's
by
right.
the way. which-
Yeah.
So you bring your dog to work on a regular basis.
You bet your sweet pencil case
Absolutely. And what does Dolly do when she's not on
He's
stage?
trying to promote a play, and you're talking about
Well, I'm
the
just
damn
wondering, you have to
dog.
keep him in. I mean,
I'm not I don't need to promote it. It's that good.
Excuse me. By the way, can we get back to the play for 1 second here?
Yeah.
What is tell briefly the story of Little Christmas Tree Shop of Horrors.
Well, it's about a small dollar store in Revere, Massachusetts.
Revere,
a failing dollar store run by me,
You.
Mrs. Grinchley, the widow of the Grinch.
That's right.
And suddenly someone finds this Christmas tree shivering on the beach of Revere, cold, and brings it back to the shop, and hilarity ensues.
Exactly. Okay. And by the way, let me just say, what we're doing next Friday when we go as a team, all of us, is what you can do. There are a ton of great restaurants in South Boston within a block or two.
Yeah.
You make a reservation at a neighborhood restaurant, you finish eating and drinking, you walk over, and then you drink, which you can do, correct, at the Lithuanian Hall?
Oh, like a fish.
Like a
Drink,
fish.
drink,
exactly.
drink.
And as we said before, it is not for children, but it is a spectacular night. Where do you get tickets again, Ryan Landry?
Brownpapertickets.com, Little Christmas Tree Shop of Horrors.
We'll be there next Friday. You should
Okay.
go. Thank you,
Bye,
Ryan
chickens.
Landry.
Thank you very much, Ryan Landry. We're very excited about your performance. Thank you very much for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio. Thank you to people that came down to the Boston Public Library.
Thank you
It really
all.
means a lot to us.
One of them's a winner. The
That's
third
right.
mug.
Oh,
What's
yes.
her name?
Amy Pierce.
Where are you,
Is
Amy?
she still here?
Where is she?
She's
Yes,
gone.
Amy.
Oh, she's
She's
here.
hiding in the
She's
rafters.
Here. Congratulations to
Thank
Amy,
you, Amy.
Pierce. You will just adore this mug. Okay, keep up with us 24/7. Go over our podcast, which of course is called Boston Public Radio. Tune in Monday for Congressman Seth Moulton, the Ground Truth Project's Charlie Sennett, Boston Globe columnist Sean Murphy, who does all these great stories about
I'm so
people
glad
who
he's
get
here.
shafted by
Their
companies.
consumer
and
guy, yeah.
Consumer guy, that's right. The Reverends Iron Monroe and Emmett Price, and the folks behind the most successful British podcast of all time. My dad wrote a porno.
Great.
Imagine if your dad wrote a porno, Jim. Anyway.
Actually, I can't imagine my dad writing a porno to be.
We want to thank our producers,
Totally
Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Mackenzie Farkas, additional support, Gia Orsino, Fernando Cervantes, Brendan Didi, our engineer, John the Claw Parker, our executive producer, Jane Bologna, our BPL team, Angelica Marrero, Sai Patel, Colin Cockrell, and Evelyn Brito. What's up over
First
there,
of all,
Jim?
brilliant work getting the sound as beautiful as it was. The governor's with us next Thursday. Senator Whitehouse on dark money, buying the Supreme Court on Tuesday. Have a wonderful weekend. I am Jim Browdy.
I am March Regan. Thanks again for tuning in.
Thank
Hope
you.
you can tune in on Monday. Thanks again to the gang at the library. And have a great weekend, as
Thank
Jim
you.
said.
Thank
See
you
you
all.
later.